Hey everybody, today Rahdo Talks Through episode 72 of the podcast. And happy 6 years, hooray! I just realized right before I started filming that 72, wait, that's 6 years, 72 divided by 12. So I clearly have nothing special planned for this anniversary. I tend to forget about anniversaries, and it's just going to be a regular episode. We're going to do some games questions, then we're going to do some personal questions, and then I'm going to say, hey, be sure to send more questions to questions@rahdo.com, because that's all this podcast is, a series of questions followed by, hopefully, some halfway decent answers. And let's get to that right now, right after this. Okay, everybody, here we go. If you're watching on YouTube, you should see the questions off to the side. If you're listening on a podcast, you'll just have to make do and with my dulcet tones as I relay the first question from David, who's wondering if I've had the opportunity to cover Three Sisters during its Kickstarter, or if I had the opportunity during the Kickstarter, and if I had the opportunity but didn't cover it, why not? Seem to remember that I like Dice Fleet, or Fleet the Dice game. Your answer, David, is yes. I do like Fleet the Dice game quite a bit. And they did contact me about covering Three Sisters for Kickstarter, doing a preview video. And I said, yes, please, I would very much like to cover this. And then, as is sometimes the case, never heard back. I imagine, publishers only have a limited amount of budget, or maybe they only got so many copies to go around. But yeah, I would have been all over that game if I could have, and I'm very much looking forward to it when it eventually comes out. But nope, sometimes that happens. 9 times out of 10, I say no. That 10th time I say yes, 1 out of every 5 times I say yes, then they turn around and say, maybe not after all. So that's what happened here, sadly. Apparently it was a huge success anyway, so we will be getting to see it eventually. I'm super excited for it. And yeah, that's it. That's my Three Sisters story. Okay, then we move on to Phil, who's listed in my show for the last year, wasn't around when Lowlands came out in 2018, and thinks that Lowlands seems like it's right up our alley, but when Phil checked the ratings and Gone List, found it wasn't there. Why did I not play this game when it came out, and would I ever consider playing Lowlands? Good question, Phil. As I understand, you're right, I've never played it. I was certainly interested in when I first heard about it, because Feuerland is interesting, and if I recall correctly, this was going to be the first game in a series from Feuerland, where they called the Uwe series, where it wasn't Uwe Rosenberg designed games, but he was involved in the development, and they were games that if you're a fan of Uwe's games, you will like these. And so yeah, I was all over it, till I read the rules. And the problem with the game is, from what I saw, it is, to get the full experience of Lowlands, you need to have more than 2 players, because so much of it is about communal building up of dikes that will hold back floodwaters. And if you fail to do that, then there's flooding. And then if I recall correctly, sheep become more valuable because there were fewer of them because of the flooding. And so you get into, there's all these interesting social dynamics to the game, where some players will work together to build up the dike, and other players will stay away from it because they don't want it. They want the flooding to happen, so they won't contribute. And it just struck me that as a 2-player game, all of that stuff would go away, and it would just become, I don't know. And then after I'd already decided that, so I passed on it. I remember I watched a few videos, no pun included video, I think, kind of convinced me I made the right choice. And yeah, so that was the problem. I suspect it's very solid, but I was confident that if I played it, my ultimate feeling would be, yeah, there's some really neat ideas here, but you really want to have 3 or 4 or more players to really get the most out of it, so we wouldn't keep it. So I'm sure, as always, at that time of the year, when Essen games come out, it's overloaded, very busy, and I said, you know what, okay, I'm just going to take a pass on that one, because there was nothing in it, as I recall, to really kind of emulate a third player to confound things, to make it a little bit more exciting and dynamic. So that's why we had passed on Lowlands. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Okay. Although I've never really heard much from anybody that I was wrong, so I think I was probably right. Then we go to Ike, who says, first off, Ike loves how I'm trying to become a more inclusive person podcast channel. Thank you, I do try. Ike thinks it's really important to evolve our hobby away from white boys' toys. And that said, Ike does like to shovel more, likes to shovel more on, he'd like to shovel more on my social equality plate than racism and sexism. There's more to talk about. So, Ike says, we agree that perception equals reality, and therefore the evil black races in fantasy games and chainmail bikinis are not an art style, but a problem, right? And anyone who disagrees, well, Ike started to call minis dolls and white characters albinos, and boy, was that not okay for the average gamer. Yeah, especially actually there was a very powerful email that came in last month or the month before about albino, and somebody who actually named their board game publishing arm albino, and we realized how hurtful that could be. He stepped up and changed it and all that. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, talking about optics is important, but I think we don't talk enough about the game's mechanisms confirming prejudice and toxic behavior. There's an insurmountable, overwhelming pile of games that have sexist special abilities on character cards, even if the art is okay. How often do we need to see the support character being female and the brute character being the one black guy? How often is an exploration track just a way of showing how effectively your colonial forces had destroyed and deported the indigenous people? A fair amount, I would say. But anyway, here comes the question. Why don't we talk as well about the problematic prejudice-infusing game mechanisms of almost all economic and deduction games? Economic games tend to support and reward gameplay that does not care about your workers in the least. We need to make money and or victory points. The penalties for letting your people starve or overworking them is most of the time a, quote, good strategy to employ at the right moment to win. Doesn't that reaffirm that I, as a business owner in real life, doesn't it reaffirm that exploiting employers would be a good way to win at life? Or I'm sure you meant employees, would be a good way to win at life. All right. Okay, yes. I think that's a really good point. And it's something I've never really considered before. It's interesting because, I mean, basically what you're describing there is capitalism. And, that's baked into it. And I'm an American, and so it's kind of baked into me. It's very, very hard for me to cast an askance view at capitalism, even though I know intellectually it is, well, like all economic systems, it has problems. It has strengths and it has weaknesses. And exploiting the worker class in favor of profits for the manager class is certainly a big part. And obviously, our country has taken it to the ultimate extreme. And yeah, it's not something. I mean, you see, it's mostly celebrated in the games I tend to love. Your brasses and your 18xx's, and I mean. Yeah, I mean, Agricola, I wouldn't view it that way because you literally are role-playing a family and, just trying to get by. So I wouldn't say that's necessary example. But on the flip side, it is a well-known strategy in Stone Age to literally starve your people so they can seed. But then on the other hand, starvation was an actual fact of life, in the Stone Age. And, in fact, we were lucky to get a good solid meal a couple times a week. So is that just a historical reflection? Yeah. It's interesting you mention all this because literally just this week I did a run through for Anno 1800, which at first glance looks like just another Euro about chasing victory points at the expense of the proletariat, and it features a fair amount of colonization of the New World and all that. But what's fascinating about this game is it wasn't. I actually contend that Anno 1800 is a very progressive game that really flips the script because you are chasing after victory points in this game. But here's how you get them. You fulfill the needs of the people of your society. In this game, it's actually interesting. In most games, wow, I never really thought about this before. We very rarely play government officials in these games. We are always cast in the role of nobles, and upper class folks who are called upon through some form of the free market to basically, try to succeed and therefore become job creators. I have to admit, you're really blowing my mind. It's so true. And it's just so baked into me because I was raised in a culture that celebrated this. I never thought about it first, I guess. But it's interesting that your email came right at the time because getting back to Anno, what this game does is, okay, I'm a government employee. I am not, a captain of industry. It is my job as a government representative to fulfill the needs of the people of my land. And so it means basically it's doing all the same stuff, getting goods, converting them into objects, and then fulfilling recipes, i.e. the needs of the people to score points. But I was so taken by the story. If you watch my final thoughts, I mean, I was grinning ear to ear. And I don't think This was something I realized, really, until your email, this was something I wanted to see more of because I think it more appropriately reflects my personal worldview. Because I forgot to mention, so you get points. I mean, money is worth nothing at the end of the game. Accumulating wealth is not what you're trying to do. It is a game about wealth redistribution. Because if I make the smart decisions and create the industries that generate the stuff, it's all towards the goal of improving the lives of the people who have elected me to do that. And interesting, you can actually get wealth. There's literal gold in the game, but the function of gold is not to buy more stuff, but rather to literally give to the people. Because it is a worker placement game, and eventually all the worker placement spots are filled up, and I could spend an entire turn to let everybody rest, to have a fiesta. I could literally throw a government-sanctioned fiesta to allow everybody to have a better life, and that means they all get to reset, and I can start doing worker placement again. That's nice, but if I do come across actual gold, I can give that gold directly to the people, so they don't have to wait for the big once-a-year fiesta. I can improve the quality of their life and let them rest right away, and it benefits me because it clears up worker placement spots so I can continue to push my industry so that I can get more stuff so I can give it to people to make them happy. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then on top of that, the game also features a healthy dollop of trade between players, and that is to say that I can't possibly get all of the all of the industries. It's impossible to invest all of them, all the ones I need, but chances are somebody else around the table will. So you have trade tokens, and their only function in the game is to spend them so that you can activate the industry of another player. And in any other game, this would be some kind of zero-sum thing where, oh, well, I have to give and I have to give it to you, and so I have to lose something so you can gain something. Zero-sum. The very simple black and white view of economics that drives capitalism. Hey, if you're succeeding, I'm failing. There's only so much to go around. And that's, and again, that's kind of core to game design because it really simplifies these economic simulations. But it's not true. It's not the reality of the real world. Working towards communal good raises everyone's boat. And so in this game, when I use a trade token, I hold on to it, and it can be refreshed later as part of my festival, so I can use them again. And then I get to activate your industry to get whatever I needed for my needs. You end up getting gold. And it doesn't come from me. It's not like I have to spend the gold to give to you. It comes from the common supply. Because the act of you and me, even though we're competitors, we're competing nations, working together is towards towards my good and your good. And the gold that you get, the wealth you get, is in turn can be used as a form of universal basic income to give to your players, to give to your workers so that they are leading better lives. And I was blown away by this. And then on top of that, it also handles colonialization in a completely different way than any other game because it's 100% about not subjugating and exploiting the new world, but rather creating trade deals. And it obviously it's a work of fantasy because this is not how history really played out. But I loved it, and that combined with your email makes me think, yeah, I want to see more of this. I can think of another game. Fire Robin came out a couple of years ago or last year from Friedman Freeze. It is a game about workers, but the interesting thing is Fire Robin, in English, it's called Free Time, I believe, and it's about trying to balance the work and home life of your workers. And your workers can actually form unions and can actually strike for better working conditions. And success in this game comes from being able to push your economic agenda, but also from making sure your workers, live fulfilled lives and actually share in the rewards. And it doesn't all go to the top. And so there are some games out there, but I agree. They are the exception to the rule. And I think you're right. I hope to see it's something maybe changes a little bit. All right, anyway, you continue. With deduction games, the game mechanisms lead you to narrow down on suspects, investigate the people who are out of the norm, who are different. That's problematic, especially if nearly all deduction games fall into the trap of making it a dead giveaway who the culprit is when you find out someone has a mental illness. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. So you're not necessarily talking about werewolf. You're talking about Sherlock Holmes murder mystery type stuff. Doesn't that confirm the fears of most people to interact with someone who battles mental illness because these people are dangerous and insane? That's a good point. I have to admit, I don't have as much of insight on this because fundamentally, I don't play these kinds of games, so I don't know. I have not played them enough to see patterns that you have, so I'll take your word for it. But I think that's a really interesting. And honestly, until this second, I had not put Anno 1800 and Fire Auburn together as an alternate way to go that doesn't just have to be about bottom line, pure, naked, raw capitalism, which I'm looking around, I am surrounded by games that champion that. And makes me all the gladder that I really celebrated Fire Auburn and Anno 1800 for doing something different and arguably something better. So thank you very much for the observations, Ike. I think I largely agree. Okay. And thanks for commenting. Keep up the good work. You too. Sorry for any typos. English is not. No, you had a couple of weird wordings, but I totally understood you, Ike. You did great. Alrighty. Even if English is not your first language, I'm sure you do much better than I did in whatever your language is. Okay, but moving on to Ben, who says, when filming run-throughs of games using solo rules, is it my first time playing solo, or do I play it solo as well during the run-through? Okay, I think you mean how often, and the answer is fairly often. How often, if you're watching me do a run-through of a game and it's a solo game, am I playing it for the first time? I don't know, maybe 50% of the time, maybe as much as that. If a game has a good solo mode, what I will often do if I've got time is I'll play it solo myself to learn the game well enough so that when Jen comes in, it just goes silky smooth. And then Jen and I will play the game, and then and I only film games solo if the solo run-through captures the spirit of what the multiplayer game is. So under those circumstances, like Anno 1800, which I just filmed, I will then film it solo. But there have been plenty of times when I don't quite have that much time, and so we get to the table and I'm just playing it with Jen straight away. And under those circumstances, still, sometimes I might play solo before I film, but often, if you see me, it's not at all unreasonable to assume that you're watching me play it solo for the first time when I'm actually filming. And I believe that was your question. Okay. Raphael says that I've had some serious discussions in my talks recently. Yes, I certainly have. I just did a few minutes ago. And you let us know that you don't want to be some kind of arbiter of game worth or quality. Yes, I think that had to do with why don't I talk about the price of games in my videos, I assume. Has the game reviewing career, job, hobby, not sure how you classify your online presence. Oh, it's a job. It's a job. It's a career. It's a job, totally. That I've done over the years reduced my enjoyment of the games I love? And if so, have you thought about how much longer you'd like to do these reviews and talks? It has not. It is something I'm very, very cognizant of, very, very nervous about. Although even more so than my own enjoyment, I very much worry about Jen's enjoyment. If she ever burns out, the show's over because I won't have anyone to play. But I do worry about my own too. And it hasn't happened yet. I've been doing this. I'm working on my 10th year. I finished year 9. We're just into year 10, and I still am enjoying games as much as ever. I think it really helps a lot that, much to Jen's chagrin, we very rarely get to go back and experience old games again. It's constantly what's new, what's different. And I'm a novelty junkie. I do love seeing new, exciting, different things. So that really helps keep it fresh. It's interesting. If I never started doing this, before I started doing Rahdo Runs Through, Jen and I, we played Agricola every Sunday for a year. We just would play the same games over and over and over again. And I could have gone back to that life. Honestly, I didn't want to. I wanted to be able to keep getting new experiences, and Rahdo Runs Through allows for that. Allows me to keep getting new, fresh, exciting stuff. And I have not tired of it yet. Fingers crossed, I won't. If it does get to that point, I will take steps, because I don't want to lose board gaming from my life. Or more for a point, I do not want to lose board gaming from my married life. Playing with other people, I could take it or leave it. I do enjoy it, playing at conventions and stuff like that. That's really great. But I'm not driven to do that. I'm driven to play games with my wife, Jen. She's my best friend. She's the love of my life, and I want to share experiences and passions and enthusiasms with her. So, I'll be honest. You may have noticed, I've got a couple of contributors. I'm constantly trying to find more. I almost had one, but it didn't quite work out. We're working on another one right now that I might roll out in the next couple months. I would like to get to a point, well, kind of like where Tom Vassell is, where, he's got so many people contributing to the channel. And now this is where Tom and I would differ. Tom is just doing it so more games can get covered. I can see 5 years down the line, if I've got a group of people who do just as good as, if not better, a job of doing run-throughs than I do, that over time I could slowly start not appearing, giving more and more of those incoming games to them and fewer of myself. Maybe just showing up for final thoughts, like Shea and I did the other day for the The initiative. Yeah, the initiative. And, and maybe just focusing on the roundups and let other folks do the run throughs. I could definitely see that being a future I would like to work towards because, I don't know, Tom seems to have infinite energy and I don't. And certainly my wife doesn't either. So, I mean, at some point there is going to need to be a shift. And I am taking steps now to support that. So the channel, I mean, someday I'm going to die. And I'd love this channel to continue to live on without me. I mean, we're all in uncharted territory. YouTube's a new thing. It hasn't even been around for 2 decades. So, I mean, how does it work? What's Rahdo Runs Through look like 100 years from now when I'm gone? Although hopefully not. I'm planning on living forever. I don't know about you, but I don't know. But it gives me a lot of pleasure to know that there's a possibility, and I want to take steps to ensure that something I created could still be providing joy and value to people long after I'm gone. You know, I don't have kids. I'm never going to have kids. Is Rahdo Runs Through my kid? I don't know. Is my bid at immortality? Of course, I made a lot of really popular, successful video games that I think will always, on some level, even hundreds of years from now, be remembered as kind of, influential and important, even if the people who derive joy from them are long gone. But yeah, I mean, if Rahdo Runs Through is still on the air, covering whatever board games look like in 100 years, can you imagine? That would be amazing to me. So I really want to strive towards that, which I don't think was within the purview of your question. Anyway, so if so, have you thought about how much longer you'd like to do these reviews talks? I don't think about it too long and hard. Or like I said, the main thought is I know I can't do it forever. I know I won't stick to it forever. And so I am trying to take steps to ensure that it outlasts me. How long till you hang up your webcam and go back to just playing games with Jens and your friends? I hate to see you get so stressed. It's not healthy. I am living a charmed life. Any stress I've got is so inconsequential, and I know that. So don't worry. I'm okay. Be kind to yourself as much as you can, Rahdo. Myself, I love what you do and what you have to say. I respect your opinion, and I consider it as I do with my favorite reviewers before purchasing a game. Okay, well, hopefully I've answered your question. Oh, how long do I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, it won't, I don't think it'll be just a one day, just flip the switch and hey, everybody, I'm done. It'll be a slow tapering off. I mean, it's been a slow tapering off already. 2 years ago, I was running through twice as many games a month as I am now. These days I'm probably running through, 12 to 15 games a month. 2 years ago, I was doing 20 or 30 games a month. That was unsustainable. And I still remember what that felt like. So what I'm doing now feels so much better. And it's so great to have Shea as a, as a literal, as I wasn't going to say, but I'm going to say it, as a crutch for me to lean on, who can take some of the games. Like, I really want to cover this. I just can't. Shea, can you do this? And he says yes. And I want more of that. Not because not because I'm trying to build a team, but for those other reasons I was talking about. And just to make it easier on myself. Alrighty. Follow-up question. When I decide to move on from RRT, have I thought, or have I been approached to play through and review games in a different way or format? Like part of a weekly panel show where you and other reviewers, game designers, artists physically in the same studio talking about certain topics and news, or interview shows where you and other well-known reviewers interview. Peace from the Midwest, Raphael. That's a good question. Honestly, if somebody from Geek and Sundry came to me and said, hey, we want to pick up where Will Wheaton left off. We want to bring tabletop back and we want you to do it. I would be there in a heartbeat. That would be so amazing. To be surrounded by a team who can do all of the stuff I do, so all I have to do is just show up and be the talent. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Geek and Sundry, or any other media, or whoever owns Geek and Sundry, call me baby. That I could totally see doing that. If eventually board games we're ever so slowly, ever so surely breaking through to the wider audience, to the popular zeitgeist, but we're still a long ways off. And but we will eventually get there. We will get to the point where people just don't. It's not at all weird that people, in the same way, it's not at all weird that grown people play chess. Nobody thinks twice about that. So, I don't know, chess, isn't that for kids? That's going to happen for board games. It's probably going to happen for board on a societal level. In my lifetime, I'd like to think so. Maybe not, but I'd like to think so. And at that point, I can see broadcast TV having tabletop-like shows the way they have broadcast championships for poker right now. That'd be amazing. I would totally be all over that. just to be the host of the show, that would be amazing. That would actually literally be like kind of a dream job. And I should stop talking about it now, but I keep saying it, so hopefully it will manifest itself into the universe, through quantum physics and stuff like that. But yeah, I could certainly see something like that. Interview shows, I don't know that I want to become a Dick Cavett that's a lot of work. I just like playing the games and just being entertaining and being the life of the party and keeping everybody going. That makes sense to me. But anyway, yeah, good question. Okay, Jack. Hey, Jack. On my Gone.Rahdo list, Viticulture's entry says it's a great game. I only got rid of it because the box takes up shelf space of 2 boxes, and I'm side on shelf space. That is true. That was definitely true when I got rid of it many, many, many years ago. I actually had, Viticulture plus the original Tuscany, which, I mean, the two things combined, it was ginormous. And I did get rid of it. Mostly because it's like, okay, well, every year I've only got so many shelves. I've got almost twice as much shelf space here as I did in Malta, and that's why I got rid of it. Although it's not the only reason. It's really the main. If it weren't for shelf space, I wouldn't have gotten rid of it. But you might follow up, maybe you will, but I'm just going to say right now, the other reason I got rid of it is because, hey, I got to get rid of some stuff. Hey, I'm getting rid of 1 game instead of 2 or 3 games. That's a plus. But there's another thing too, which is, I don't remember if I mentioned this in my run-through. I mean, this was still early days. I might not. I would, if I did a run-through for Viticulture for the first time now, I would certainly mention that it was kind of problematic just how insanely swingy those, I forget what they were even called now, the day-night cards, the special power cards, were so all over the place and so ridiculously random. And that kind of didn't sit well with me either. And it was really those two things combined. But anyway, to your question. From what Jack can gather, the new Essentials edition has a much smaller box size than the old one. I believe it. I mean, the old one was ridiculous. Given that this would now keep the game, given this, would you now keep the game in your collection, assuming the publisher sent you another copy for review, or would you get rid of it regardless? If you would still get rid of it, what's the reason? Well, actually, okay, then I'd have to find out. I'd have to give it a try again, because I haven't played it since we got rid of it. I remember having that feeling that is just, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Jamie's a smart guy. And I know Jamie does revisit designs. Has that ever been addressed? Because what I recall is that those cards, if you draw them at the right time, could be incredibly powerful. And if you draw them at the wrong time, you literally wasted a turn and you might lose the game. If that's been addressed, and the box size has been addressed, although again, these days I have more room for boxes. So I don't think the box size is much of an issue. I honestly thought the game was brilliant. I thought it was gorgeous, and I really liked it wasn't day-night, it was summer-winter. That's what it was. I loved the 2 sides of the boards, moving the workers from, I thought there were a lot of really cool ideas. And just the raw mechanisms, but that would be I think that's the one thing that would keep me away from it potentially. I would want to double check, how has that come along? Okay, then we continue. Jack sent another email. And he says that I once made a video where I went through every game on my Gone list that had the entry, only got rid of it because of your international move when we moved back from Malta to America. I don't remember that, but I believe you. And I gave more reasons as to why certain games made the cut. Well, I now have a bunch more entries, so similar boilerplate, quote, out of room, having to call more games I like, frowny face, donating to the Dice Tower West convention, maybe you'll see it there. Yes, you're right. I did it was just last year, late last year, or was it early this year? I finally got rid of, it was like between 300 and 400 games, some a ridiculously huge amount. And that came about because of my friendship with Tim Misdirection, who has a great YouTube channel, and I've appeared on a few times, but also runs the Dice Tower West convention. And he had asked me, hey, what do you do with all your games? And I'm like, well, I just kind of let them sit and gather dust on the shelves. And his response was, if you ever have games you want to get rid of, you call me. And so I did, and he's able to take everything. And I feel so good about that because, like I said, in the post that you quoted, it will go to a convention, and it means potentially dozens or hundreds of people can enjoy it, rather than it just sitting and gathering dust on my shelves, which is what everything that I'm surrounded by is doing right now. The only time they ever get out is when I get an expansion. Oh, okay, an expansion, yeah, I get to play it again, so I can cover the expansion. So, but anyway, your question. Will I make a similar video where I go through each of those entries and give additional reasons? I like the Gone list specifically because it can give me a red flag. Doesn't shine with too heavy, and that makes that helps me make decisions purchasing games. My wife and I have similar taste to you and Jen's, so these are the red flags on the Gone list, along with my run-throughs, final thoughts, and Jack's own reading of the rules help ensure that I have the most informed purchasing decisions. That's great. I'm happy to hear that, Jack. I'm glad you don't just take it on faith that if I like like a game, you'll like it. But I'm just another bullet point in the research. Good on you, sir. Obviously, it was a time-consuming process the first time, and I'd be extremely grateful if you did it again. Well, you're in luck, Jack, if you've got a couple of bucks, because I did do that. For folks who don't know, I have a Patreon account. I generally try not to make a big deal about it. It's where the majority of the funding of Rahdo runs through comes from. And then on top of that, I also make some money by doing paid previews for Kickstarter. And I make a little bit of money off of YouTube ads. Those are my 3 income streams. And so on Patreon, if you back at the $2 Rambler level, that means every month you get to see a new Ramble video I film. These things are generally anywhere from a half an hour to 3 hours long, and they cover all kinds of topics. And one of the recent rambles I did was exactly what you were talking about, going through all of those didn't quite make it and why. Because of course, the thing is, every one of those games, if I had infinite space and I didn't feel guilty about it, them just gathering dust, I would have kept. So every single one of them, but still, doing that video did force me to say, well, still, I could have gotten rid of A or B. I got rid of B. Why not A? So that exists. And here's the deal. You don't have to subscribe as an ongoing yearly thing. If you go to patreon.com/Rahdo and just sign up for the $2 Rambler thing, you have access to all, what is it now? Over 2 years worth of Ramble videos I have done. You will get hundreds of exclusive, never before seen videos where I've covered all kinds of stuff, including recently that particular topic. And the thing is, you can watch them and then just cancel. Just cancel so you don't pay again the next month, and you will have enjoyed them and you can move on. And then, if you do it again a year from now, then you could just do it for 1 month and see the next 12 rambles that I did and then just cancel it again. So that's an option if you want to see it. I mean, I feel kind of dirty and mercenary even, but on the other hand, it's only $2. So it is there if you want to check it out. Okay. And the reason it's there instead of me just releasing publicly is because people are paying me, and I feel like I need to produce meaningful and useful content. So a lot of the stuff that I used to would have just put on the channel, now I say, well, hey, you support the show, you get these cool things. It's not just like one of them was I did if you have $250 and you go to an online retailer to start building a collection from scratch, what games should you get? And I actually made a list of I made 3 different lists of 3 different types of lists of, if I had $250 and I was starting a collection from scratch, I'd do this list, this, or this, and here's why. That was a really cool thing. I've done my only ever negative top 10, where I did my top 10 overrated games. It's only for Ramblers. So there's a bunch of stuff there, including what you were asking about. Okay, Jack then finishes up with, if I'm going to make a video, I don't need to answer this. Well, we'll find out. If you don't think you'll make a video, could you elaborate on why? Because from the previous thing, why the following left your collection? Okay, well, I have made the video, right. So these ones, specifically these 4 games. Why did they leave? Well, you could go check the video. I'm sure I talked about all of them. And the thing is, for some of them, if you watch that video, I will be honest, probably about half of them, I think I have really interesting takes. And for the other half, it's like, some of them are just kind of touchy-feely. They were certainly good, but there's this other game I would play instead. Forge War, the reason it's not there, because I loved Forge War. I thought it was great. It's a 3+ hour game. I know there's a faster version of it. And in part, I know Isaac kind of developed it because I talked about it in my video. And we did try it, but it took away too much. And I realized if we're going to sit down and play a 3 hour, well, I don't know if we will ever play a 3+ hour game again. I think it's unthinkable. And so really, it was the length of Forge War. It had nothing to do with the gameplay. It's the same reason I got rid of The Colonist. Colonist was on the list of ones I got rid of when we came back to America, because that was a 5-hour game, but wonderful Euro games. Let's see. Netatonka. Oh, did I get rid of that one? Oh, man. The other 3 you're asking about. Cupcake Empire. Let's see. That was the engine building game. Oh, man. I'm sorry. And honestly, I think for those other 3, I don't know that I necessarily had a good answer for any of those. Forge War, I could tell you definitively, it was just too long to warrant ongoing play, especially considering the fact I never played anyway. Cupcake Empire, Magnastorm, Netatonka, I thought all of those are great. I especially dug Neta. Of those 3 you mentioned, I really liked the worker placement in Netatonka. And it was gorgeous. It was such a beautiful game. And it's interesting. They did ultimately, often publishers won't do it, but they did send me a final retail version of the game. It was still in shrink wrap. And I mean, and I, and I thought, well, should I keep this? Well, am I going to play it again? Maybe, but probably not. And it was, I mean, maybe it's because it was literally in shrink wrap, and so I knew that, uh, I mean, that made it was like a fresher new game to donate to the. By the way, when I say donate, I'm making a couple bucks off of each of these games. So it's a nominal fee for all the work and heartache I went through to get them all boxed up and packaged and sent. So I made a little bit off of all these games, but just, I think it was less than $5 a box on average. But anyway, yeah. I think Neta Talk, just because I had it and I hadn't opened it. It had nothing to do with the game. Forge War was length. Magnus Storm was that funky game. I do think with Magnus Storm, I would worry a little bit about replayability if I were to give it a red flag, because it didn't really have a lot of variability to the setup. There was a little bit, I think, with the unique player powers, as I recall. But, I mean, I think a lot of what Magnastorm really would benefit from is more than two players to bring a lot more variety and variability and unpredictability to the board. And in two players, maybe would have got. I may be worried that maybe it would get a little stale. Maybe. I'm not quite sure. I thought about this months ago. That's kind of what I have a dim recollection. And Cupcake Empire, I couldn't tell you. But I will say that the fact I couldn't tell you, basically, I guess that tells you something. I guess it just wasn't very memorable because I genuinely don't remember it. What I liked or didn't like about it. I think we played it. I didn't actually do a run through of it, did I? I think I just talked about it in a roundup. Did I? Man, that's driving me nuts. I'm going to go ahead and look. Alrighty, let's go look over here and do a search for descriptions of, what was it? Cupcake Empire. No, actually, I don't think. Okay, no, not title, description. Description contains Cupcake Empire, because it would have been Cupcake. Alrighty, so apparently I did talk about it in in that Rahdo Rambles number 35 that I talked about it and everything else I got rid of. That's an hour and 10-minute long video, and oh, and I also talked about it in Rahdo Rambles 24. Apparently, when it was one of the new games that got added to the shelf. And it was in the May Roundup 2019. So maybe go check out May 2020 Roundup. Apparently I talked about it there. I genuinely don't remember anything about it though. So like I said, that does say something. Anyway though, so hopefully that helps a little bit, Jack. Okay, Tim says, hi, I don't think you've talked about it for a while. What's the latest on Plunderous? Well, my prototype of Plunderous is right up there right now. And at this point, the game has changed significantly. And in fact, actually, I've taken a bit of a step back from it. I was really involved for a while with the development of the co-op game, which we were about to roll out, but then the Kickstarter failed to find tractions and whatnot. And so when Andrew took it back, he really doubled down on trying to add more value to the game. Coming up with, and in some ways, that meant, finding new ways to print, but it also meant changing the rules. He only had there was simply no reason to have a lot of miniatures, but it costs nothing for him to ramp. Once you've made the miniatures, I mean, it's very cost effective after you've done the initial molds to say, hey, here's 30 miniatures instead of 13. And so he changed the rules a little bit so that we could make use. And so there's more opportunity for more variety of warfare. In the original game, everybody picked one of the mechs, and that was the mech you had. But now there are enough mechs so that multiple people can have the squid mech if they want. So that's like an example. And so the game has more value to customers because there's a lot more cool little mechanical squids in it because there's enough for everybody to have one. So he did changes to the rules like that to, do this. And in the process of continuing to work on the co-op and refining it, one of the things he decided to do was work on, a narrative campaign that you could play through. And once he started going down that route, that really opened up a lot of things that he then wanted to bring back into the main game. And so the main game has gone through a lot of iterations, and we have talked about it a fair bit. That the act of being forced to take what had traditionally for him been a competitive game, but make it work in a compelling way for a co-op mode, basically opened his eyes to a lot of really cool mechanisms that worked in the original game even better. So the original game has gotten better and better and better and better, and bigger. A better value proposition. The co-op game has gotten it's shifted back and forth from being super elaborate, like the main focus of the game, back to, oh wait, no, it's an expansion. So he's constantly kind of going back and forth with that. As for where he is right now, I think the other day he thought maybe he'd launch later in the year. But, I honestly, he's having too much fun playing with it and tweaking it, and doing lots of online plays of it, and so I'm not quite sure what the status of it is at this point, but it has definitely gone through a very interesting journey. Okay, then we've got Lou, who says, I'm sorry, Lou. Lou has, folks, never played Glory to Rome. It's the most hyped Grail game of all time! And when browsing through my ranked games, as well as my own games on Board Game Geek, he noticed that I rank Glory to Rome, and that I own it. Wouldn't it be fun to make a live playthrough of that game? I know it's long out of print, but, says Lou, it'd really be fun to watch Jen and I play it. So, Lou knows what he's missing out. Now, Lou, I did do a run-through of it. I filmed it back when we lived in Malta, back when we lived in the castle in Malta. And I think it does a pretty good job of capturing the feel of the game, so you might want to go check that out if you haven't seen it. It's a very old video. It's back when I was still filming with my iPhone, but it's there. All right, so yeah, I get you need to make a living out playing games, and therefore need to play a game, somewhat new hot games all the time, but perhaps you can make this a stretch goal or Patreon goal of some sort. I guess a lot of people would love to see this happen purely for entertainment only, for most of us anyway, since it's so hard to find. At a fair price point. We'll likely never get to own or play it. Thank you for the great podcast and keep up the good work. Best wishes. Oh, Ludwig, not just Lou. Lou, here's the reason. Well, first of all, I have done a run through of it. And the reason I wouldn't do it again is, one, because it's already done and there's other things I haven't done yet. I've got a queue of more than 60 games over there that publishers have sent to me, and I feel like I have to prioritize that because in good faith, they have sent me stuff to cover and I have not covered it. So I just don't feel good about going back and covering old stuff. But the other reason in this case, I mean, if you'd said, hey, couldn't you go back and do some more coverage of Lords of Waterdeep or something like that? You might have a different, but the other thing that applies to Glory to Rome is, it's just not fair. You're right. I would feel that making a video of it now and showing how great and fun it is just kind of thumbing my nose at people. Ha ha! You can never have this unless you want to pay $300+ on eBay to get an old moth-eaten version of it. I appreciate what you're saying. And like I said, if you haven't seen it, I have put a run through out there. But yeah, I've got priorities. I've got to put these other games first. Now, that said, I was talking about my Kickstarter earlier. Not my Kickstarter, my Patreon. The highest level patrons, they get to, because because they're what we call whales in the video game industry. They really love the channel. They've got disposable income, and they like to feel like they're really making a contribution. And believe me, they make a huge contribution. The highest level folks who back my channel get to actually pick games that I will cover. So if any of them ever asked me to do it, I would certainly do it. So if any of them are listening and you want to make Ludwig's day, I suppose that's a possibility. Although even still at this point, if I were to do it, I would do it as one of my Patreon backer exclusive videos because I just don't feel good about putting it out there in public to just rub everybody's nose in it that this is a game you can't have. So that's kind of why I would kind of give pause to that idea. I'm sorry. But again, check out my run through. It's there. Okay. Nigel says he wants to talk about gamers versus non-gamers. Do I think it is all important to distinguish between gamers and non-gamers? There are some who feel that even the term non-gamer is pejorative and that as a hobby we should try to avoid snobbery or gatekeeping. While I agree with this sentiment, I do feel it is useful to make some kind of distinction between fanatical board gamers and people who perhaps only play a game once a year at a family gathering but otherwise show no particular interest. Saying that anyone who plays games, no matter how infrequently, can call themselves a gamer can lead to people in the hobby overestimating the accessibility of games to people that have no idea what, quote, a deck builder or, quote, dice worker placement means. Whenever I see people recommending gateway games to new gamers or people who have never even played a board game, the titles that are typically mentioned are games such as Ticket to Ride, Catan, Carcassonne. However, I wonder whether these recommendations are based on whether an experienced gamer is available to teach the game or whether the rules, and crucially rule books, for such games are straightforward enough for those with no experience to learn the game. Looking at the Wingspan Facebook group, I often see people who haven't played a board game since Snakes and Ladders being completely baffled by the rules for that game, even after watching the rules videos by Rodney Smith, etc. I feel that embracing the status of non-gamer rather than stigmatizing it could help us, help to those who aren't that invested in the hobby have fun with the one game they decide to join in on every blue moon. And as a rules reader and teacher, and game developer, do you think it's important for publishers, etc., to make the distinction between gamers and non-gamers in terms of how easily a person with no experience at all could approach the game blind with no help from someone who already knows the game? Ooh, this was a long one. I didn't realize this was going to be quite so long. I should have summed it up. If the term non-gamer seems exclusive, is there a preferred term you have? Best wishes, Nigel. And then Nigel includes some awesome pictures of his pooches, which will show up in the when Jen shows up in a little bit. Okay, Nigel, it's an excellent question. And it's interesting. I don't remember what game it was that I covered, or if it was a top 10. I don't remember where it was. But John Perkis of Actual Lol, which if you haven't checked it out, you have to. He's got an amazing YouTube channel. He is genuinely hilarious and really insightful with his games. He has, and his remit, his focus is much more towards gateway style gamering. I mean, he likes a nice heavy Euro every once in a while too, but he's much more about party games and light games that he can bring noobs to the table. And anyway, so I forget where it was I said, but he called me out in the comments of one of my videos where I had said, I had referred to, that this was a gamer game. That this, whatever it was, and I assume what I was saying is it was a really big, heavy game. It was an Agricola size thing. And I said, this is truly a gamer's game. This is for gamers. And I didn't even give it a second thought. And he pointed out that was a form of gatekeeping. That why do you only get to be considered a gamer, which is obviously a positive attribute, if you are willing to put in the years of time and study and all of that? Why can't people who enjoy Ticket to Ride be considered gamers? Why should they be excluded from that moniker? And I mean, it's kind of the opposite tact you're taking. You're saying, well, why should non-gamer be pejorative? He was saying, why can't somebody who enjoys games even casually, why can't they consider themselves a gamer? And now you're both coming from the same point of view is, well, language serves us best if it actually does its job of communicating ideas efficiently. That's what we're here to do when we're talking. And ultimately, I think of these two different sides of this, I kind of err towards John's side. That all things being equal, you know what? If somebody derives pleasure or joy from saying, hey, I'm a gamer too. I play Uno. I mean, you could laugh at them, or you could try to, let me take you aside and explain a few things about what a gamer really is. But why? Why can't they have the joy and the inclusion of, oh, you like games? I like games too. I'm a total gamer. We just played Chutes and Ladders the other day with my kids. Love games. I don't want to take that away from anybody. So what I resolved to do after John, I think, rightfully called me out about this, about just my casual use of language here, is I shifted the other way. And so what I try not to say this is a real gamer game. I try to say this is a real game for gamer geeks. And so because, Board Game Geek, of course, is our online mecca. And I don't think, and I think that's a good way to go. Hey, if you enjoy games, if you like playing games every once in a while, you're a gamer too. I'm a gamer, you're a gamer. We have this in common. This is a gulf. Maybe we don't play the same games, but we're all gamers. We all love games. We're human. I mean, games are so crucial to what makes us a species that's different. I mean, it's, you go back in ancient history, the Olympics were such an early example of people reaching across divides through the power of gaming. And that still happens today. Yes, there's a lot of tribalism about gaming too, but let's downplay the tribalism. Let's open the doors. Let's make it a bigger tent wherever possible. So, hey, if you like Uno, you're a gamer as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't make you a gamer geek though. And I think that maybe works a little bit better. Yeah, there's kind of an elitism to it, but it's also kind of, the fact that we're calling ourselves geeks is kind of self-mocking, and we're kind of winking a little bit about it. And so that's kind of what I try to do now. Whenever I do make the distinction, I try to say, this is a game for real gamer geeks. You know what I'm talking about. If you're Agricola fans out there, only gamer geeks need to apply. That's the way I've gone with it, and I'm pretty happy with it. Although, to be honest, it generally doesn't come up that often. To your other point, which was kind of a side, but I do think it was a really good one, about when people recommend gateway games, and I will admit I am guilty of this, that a gateway game to truly be a gateway... Well, actually, okay, does a gateway game need to truly function on its own? Or does a gateway game need to be something that I, as a gamer geek, can use as a gateway tool to bring you into the fold? Because that means it just has to be fun to play, but it doesn't necessarily have that incredibly arduous high bar to set. Because here's the, I believe if you have an interest in birds, I could sit down and you could have a good time playing Wingspan with me. I believe that to be the case. Wingspan is a hard one because, of course, you got closed hands. That's always going to make it tougher to function as a gateway game. But I would just, hey, let's play open, and I'll show you what I'm doing. I'll walk you through, and I'll help you get an idea of what kind of things you can do and what you need to think about. Now, of course, I have a lot of practice with this. This is what I do professionally. But I think Wingspan could be a phenomenal gateway game looked through that lens. Somebody who has an interest in the subject matter and has a geek, a gamer geek in their life who's willing to do the heavy lifting to help them enjoy it. But I don't think that's what most people mean. The assumption is, oh, if it's a gateway game, yeah, you could just go out and buy this at your local friendly game store, take it home, and learn how to play it and play it. And to be honest, that's a much higher bar. And I think that is really what we should consider a gateway game, and I don't use that consideration enough. And I can't, because in all honesty, I read hundreds of rule books every year. I mean, do I want to say thousands? Do I read thousands of rule books every year? No, I'll say hundreds. High hundreds of rule books every year. And I'm to the point where what other people would consider the worst rule book of all time is totally fine for me. So I can't judge that. It's interesting though, I have done 2 top 10s for gateway games. And when I did both of those, I did take the rule book into account because I definitely expected, that was a kind of clickbaity title and it was going to potentially lead total strangers who have no games in their life to use it. So I really tried to ensure that the games I put on those lists, the 2 times I did it, had rules that anybody could pick up and play. But you're right, a lot of gateway games don't, and that is a problem. And I should do better at that. And ultimately, I don't want to go for non-gamer and try and build that up. I try to build up Gamer Geek as its own thing so that everybody can be a gamer. I think that's the way to go. Okay, good question though. Hey, Mario. Mario has a bunch of questions. I'm going to get a drink of water first. Excuse me. Woohoo. Alrighty, so Mario left this email in the drafts for so long, no longer sure if it will make it in time for the April Q&A. Oh yeah, it came in on the 27th, it looks like. But whatever. Worst thing that happens, some of the questions are outdated. Okay, so first up, did you realize this episode 72 marks 6 years of the podcast? Apparently, I missed the 5 years last year, so let's just celebrate a weird milestone. Yeah, I think I talked about that right up front, that I have finished. Oh wait, yeah, I finished my... I finished my 5th year. I'm starting my 6th year. I think that's the case. And you're right. I realized it, as you heard at the beginning of this podcast. Oh, now you get me second guessing. Oh, I hate doing math in my head. It makes me, I'm literally breaking out in a sweat thinking about doing math in front of you in my head. So I'm just going to move on. Last month, Mario was trying to remember where he was when the podcast started. Yep, I'm one of those listening since episode 1. I'm amazed you made it this far. And realized the mark was pretty close. How do I feel about it? Honestly, it's of no great... obviously, how did I feel about it? I completely forgot until I sat down to record. Until I said the number out loud. And I remembered it was divisible by 6, which means, if I recall correctly, I'm starting my 6th year of filming. I finished my 5 years of filming. But I don't really go for landmarks or anniversaries or dates. In the month of April, you probably know, it was Jen's and my 30th wedding anniversary. Would you like to know what we did for our 30th wedding anniversary, Mario? We had round table pizza at home and watched a show. We had originally planned on actually doing something a bit more romantic, getting dressed up, going to a restaurant. But apparently, if I recall correctly, it fell on a Thursday, and we looked it up, and every restaurant within 20 miles of us was closed on a Thursday, which is, what's that about? I never heard of that. But anyway, so we couldn't do it. And then I remembered that Jen and I met in college because of Round Table Pizza. I think I've told the story before. If I haven't told the story before, that's why folks can send questions to questions@rahdo.com, and I will tell the story again about Round Table Pizza and how it made Jen and me fall in love. And when I said, there's a Round Table Pizza not too far away, we could get that, and Jen said, yes, that's perfect, let's do that. And so we had Round Table Pizza. It was as good as it's ever been, hadn't had it for years, and we just watched whatever shows we were going to watch that night. Neither Jen nor I are really big on celebrating milestones. I think Jen used to be a little bit more, and maybe I've rubbed off on her. So yes, it's a cool milestone, but I should get more excited, but I don't. Alrighty, continuing on. Mario says that I've admitted that I now do solo run-throughs if it doesn't affect the way the game works for multiplayer. Correct. Do I find myself playing more solo gaming lately? Do I rate games thinking on the solo mode? You remember some time ago I mentioned Space Hulk Death Angel was the only game I owned to play solo because Jen doesn't care about it. Did that list get any new game? Yes, one game. The only reason I own Marvel Champions and keep getting all of the expansions is because I love it so much, and sadly, maybe twice a year I can convince Jen to play a game with me. And that makes me sad, but I love it so much I'm playing it solo. But no, I am still, as a general rule, not seeking out solo plays. I am playing solo. I think I already had a question about that earlier. For the channel, but if it weren't for the channel, I don't think I would become a solo gamer anytime soon. Marvel Champions, but that's because of my deep abiding love of the subject matter. Space Hulk Death Angel, honestly, because it was just good to have one. Just good to have a good one, and that was the one I had. So right now I've got 2 solo-only games. Although again, I can occasionally, if the mood is right. It's just, the problem with Marvel Champions is, and I talked about this a little bit in the last roundup, or did I? No, I didn't. I meant to. Marvel Champions has put out so much stuff now that I'm really worried about one of the directions they're going. They're increasing the difficulty through the roof because they've got so many hardcore elite players, and so they're catering to them and making the game unfun for normies like myself. Marvel Champion gamers, as opposed to Marvel Champion gamer geeks, to use the previous phraseology. But the other thing they're doing is they're making the villains progressively more and more and more complex. And Jen has zero patience for that at all. She's totally fine with her hero being complex, but having a bunch of bookkeeping, I mean, geez Louise, Nebula was said so much crap you were having to keep track of, and oh my gosh, Ronan was insane, both for difficulty and for complexity. And it seems like they're just like, they're hey, the game's been around long enough, we got to keep on bumping it up to the next level. And I'm worried, if you ask me this again next year, I might not own Marvel Champions anymore. Just the other day, I knocked its rating out of my top 10 games of all time because my ratings are always based on the game plus all the expansions I've played, and it's getting to the point where it's still rating an 8. I'm still keeping it, but if they don't change course or do something to try to, because it's one of the things I mentioned in Marvel Champions when I first covered it is I was amazed how much it does while being fairly elegant compared to other games of its ilk. And I don't think it's very elegant anymore, and it's getting less so with every new expansion, and it's breaking my heart. But anyway, so for now though, anyway, Marvel Champions is my one other solo game. Alrighty. About La Granja no Siesta, which was the roll and write. Why didn't it make the cut? What was the missing hook that made it fall for the international move? You would know if you go and back me and watch the ramble, which I just talked about a little bit earlier in this episode. But all of that aside, it was a good little game. I think a lot of games, if you watch those videos, you'd find well, you know what? If I ever had the opportunity to go back and play this game, I wouldn't. I would play this other game instead. And that was the problem with La Granja no Siesta. There's nothing wrong with it. It was a great little roll and write. There are just a half a dozen other roll and writes I would play before it. I would play Railway Inc., which I kept. I would play On Tour, which I kept. I would play Fleet the Dice Game, which I kept. There were, if I were going to sit down and play a roll and write, I would play Castles of Burgundy, the dice game, which I kept. And so I was just like, okay, I can keep this too, but I know it will never, ever, ever, ever get played because of all these other ones that scratch the same itch, and I'd play them first. So it wasn't a fault against it. It's just there were other ones I liked more. Okay, continuing. After watching my top 10 two-player games, Mario started to wonder. He says that I had the caveat about, oh, when I did the top 10, about only two-player games, or two-player games, or I should say 1 to 2-player games, games that had a solo or two-player mode. We kept out of that list anything that, yeah, you could play it two-player, but you know what? Here's the rules for four-player. If the publisher did that, then it wasn't a two-player game. Anyway, so if I'd taken that caveat out, allowing for more than two-player games to be included in the top 10, how different do I think the top 10 would have been? It would have been completely different. The top 10 would have been my top 10 games, period. Because if you just want to say, what are my favorite games that support two players? Those are my top 10 favorite games of all time. And it would be literally exactly the same. And so that's why I had to put that caveat that, okay, because Castles of Burgundy and Trajan and Gloomhaven and Peloponnese and Agricola and Pandemic and oh man, can I do it? And Seven Wonders, I think that originally fell out, or Marvel Champions just for a little bit. I mean, so it would have been a meaningless list for me to do, because if it could be any player count and it's just ones I enjoy playing it to, I enjoy playing all my games at two players. So that's why I had to put that caveat in. But anyway, so you point out, yeah, so none of these would have made the list because none of them are in my top 10 favorite games of all time. So that's why I had that declaration, that caveat. Alrighty, so, and then we'll be back with Mario for some personal stuff later. Hey, Jesper. Jesper says, now that I brought on Shea, do I have any older games lined up for him to play through, like he did with Sive? And if so, what's in the pipeline? Hoping to see Feudum. Feudum, that's not a bad idea. I know Shea's contributions make it possible for you to have games on your channel. They're more confrontational. But are you also thinking about the opportunity to have more games that work well with 3 players and up? Yeah, oh, totally. Here's the deal. The majority of what Shea is going to cover for the foreseeable future is Kickstarter games. Because Shea is not appearing on my channel for free. Shea gets paid. And between you and me, Shea gets paid more than any other contributor on any other channel in the industry. I pay a lot. From what I understand of my contemporaries, how much they pay their contributors, I pay a lot more. And I think Shea is worth every penny. But because of that, the lion's share of the income he's making, I cannot afford to have Shea cover a half a dozen games at the rates that I am paying him. So that's one thing. However, what I have started doing is paying him to cover 1 game a month that isn't a Kickstarter one, but is, and I might pump it up to 2 games a month in the coming months. In fact, I think that is going to happen. So you'll start seeing more non-Kickstarter stuff from him because I just want to see more variety. And you're right. He just did The Initiative. Although honestly, I could have done that one, but he was really excited to do that one. So that's why he did that one. But this month he's doing Eclipse, the 2nd edition version of Eclipse. I covered Eclipse a million years ago, and I had the opportunity to cover the new one. I'm like, I don't know, but I knew people would love to see it, and he was really excited to do it. So, he's covering that. And what else is he going to be covering? It's still, for the most part, like I said, he just did Scythe. He's going to do Watergate, because so many people wanted to see Watergate. And so that's going to appear on my channel now. What else? Oh man, we do have a list. It's a pretty short list right now. Oh, Too Many Bones. He'll be covering that pretty soon, which I'm very excited about that. That's going to be another great one. And so, like I said, you're going to be seeing more and more of that. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. What I really want him to do, I want him, and I've been talking, it's the first one I ever said, hey, the first one I want you to do of this is Twilight Imperium, because this is #1 game of all time. And that's a game I would never cover in a million years, but it should totally, there should be a run-through. There's no good run-throughs of the style I do for Twilight Imperium. And I think people would like to see that so they can make a more informed decision about if it's a game for them. And it's his favorite game of all time. It's his most popular video he's ever done on his channel, his How to Play Twilight Imperium video. And he says, yeah, I really want to do it, but he wants it to be special. So he's trying to work out how he wants to do that and, bring other people in, because he's actually friends with a lot of board game content creators down in Los Angeles. So you might see some more guest appearances, or I'm not quite sure what, but that's probably far off in the future. But, that'll be one that I definitely want to see happen as well. Okay, and Feudum's an interesting one. That is a good idea. He did PAX Premiere last year, paid him for that one. I think that's the first one I paid him for, actually, if I recall correctly. I have to think about Feudum. I don't know. It's a good idea. It's a good suggestion. Okay. Hello, Gerald. Gerald here. When some people look at a camera, they look like they're looking at a camera. But you don't, Rahdo. You look. Oh, I'm taking on his voice. All right. So, okay. Gerald says that I look like I'm talking to another person. Do I have a photo or something to look at above the camera? No. I know exactly what you're talking about. Right now, I'm looking at the camera if you're watching this on YouTube instead of listening to the podcast. And that is a hard thing to learn to do. It's not natural to look at that little black box right there. And, it gives you nothing back. Now, directly to the left of the camera, from my perspective, stage left is the monitor where I can see what I'm filming. I've got it on a big screen, or decent. I think this is a 22-inch LG monitor, if I recall correctly. And so, rather than look at the camera, I am often looking at that, so I can see what I'm actually filming. And now it has the end result of, I know exactly what you're talking about. I like to call it the 60 minutes camera, because in a 60 minutes interview, the camera's always slightly off to the head, so that the interviewer and the interviewee are actually talking to each other, and the cameras are offset so they don't appear, and you always get that looking off camera. I think it's great. I don't understand why more people don't do it. It's interesting though. I would like to do it more, but I've trained myself over the years to stare at this black box, this white light, which has the word underneath it, to remind me not to say as much as I would otherwise. I still say too much, but man, I used to say, if you go back and watch my early videos, like every sixth word was Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. So that's why I always have the reminder right there. Don't say and it happens. I literally almost said just now. Anyway, there you go. I did it. Don't need the filler words. Just let it breathe. So I'm looking at a monitor. I'm monitoring what I'm filming. I actually can see myself. I'm looking at myself too. If I'm doing a top 10, like you're about to see a top 10 that I did about pandemic stuff, I'm actually looking at the person I'm talking to on Skype. And I think it has a nice look to it that isn't the same as what looks like a Skype call or a Zoom meeting kind of a thing. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my monitor. Next question. Do I think people that ask me to stop wearing t-shirts keep watching my show in the hopes that one day I will stop wearing a t-shirt? And does Jen, as my wife, get jealous when other people ask me to take off the shirt? I have not heard anything from Jen about the second question, but that was a silly question. The first question is, I'm pretty confident they don't, and I'll tell you why. Since I started wearing Black Lives Matter shirts in May of last year, I took a massive dive in terms of monthly subscribers and monthly views. And you can see the two of them collate exactly to when I started wearing them. And they never recovered. These days, I'm getting about 300 new subscribers a month. 2 years ago, I was getting 1,000 new subscribers a month. And, I thought, well, maybe it's in the industry. But you can go to, what's it called, socialblade.com, and you can actually see subscriber tracking and view tracking of channels if you just type in the name of the channel. And, I compare myself to Dice Tower and Rodney and Man vs. Meeple, and, everybody goes through ups and downs, but I am on a historic low, and I have been well below the industry average for peaks and valleys. I am living in a valley now. And there is one thing that has changed over the last year, and I'm wearing it right now. And it's a choice I've made. I suspect if I stopped wearing them, my numbers would start creeping back up to where they were 2 years ago, and I'd be on my way to getting 150,000 subscribers. As it is right now, the estimates are I will not hit 250,000 subscribers for over a decade. It took me a decade to get to 100. It's going to take me even longer to go farther because so many potential audience members refuse to watch because I wear a shirt. It's not a call to action. I'm not telling anybody to do anything. In the run through, it's only in a tiny little picture. But still, people it's their want. And I'm still going to do it anyway. It hurts my bottom line significantly. Jen and I have talked about it quite a bit, and we both agree it doesn't matter. We're going to continue to wear the shirt because I think it continues to need to be seen. And that message continues to need to be uplifted. So that's the reality. And of course, I wear a lot of other shirts now too. Although it's crazy. I wear all these different shirts. I wear Black Lives Matter. I wear Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. I wear gun control shirts. I wear Free the Uyghurs shirts. I wear Green New Deal shirts. I wear, suicide prevention shirts and trans rights shirts. And I've got like almost a dozen different shirts I wear now. None of them have gotten the pushback that Black Lives Matter has gotten. It's amazing to me. Trans Lives Matter, I've only just started. That's my most recent shirt I've just gotten. That's gotten some pushback. Probably the second most. But I mean, I expected gun control would have gotten a lot, but it doesn't. I mean, people just don't say anything. I'm sure they see me wearing a gun control shirt and they just, right, unsubscribe, and they don't say anything. But man, Black Lives Matter really gets people worked up. And trans lives matter to a certain extent as well. It's fascinating, and it's actually ultimately very, very depressing. I doff my cap to you, Jack. Jack is a regular listener to the podcast. He's a very, very hardcore Trump supporter, but he keeps coming back. He keeps asking questions. He keeps engaging. And thank you, Jack. And thank you to anybody who is off-put by my message. I hope over time it will slowly seep into your brain and change the way you think, but I'm not going to push that agenda. Sorry, just joking around a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I don't think you meant, I think you meant for a silly question, but there was a serious answer for you, Gerald. But Jen Gerald is back. He says, I always say that the worker placement is not one of my favorite mechanisms. It's true, I do always say that. Just in the middle of random dinner conversation at parties, and no one understands what I'm saying. All right, not even in my top 10 mechanisms will you find worker placement. So, Gerald S., are worker placement games that also includes one of my favorite mechanisms, or that are worker placement games that also include one of favorite mechanisms, actually your most loved type of game? Okay, you messed up your English there, but I think you're saying, are you sure worker placement is one of your favorites? Because he continues, my top 15 games of all time include Agricola, Trois, Keyflower, Dungeon Pets, and Energy Empire. That's 33% of the 15 best games of all time. Perhaps the most of one type of game from my top games. So he said, well, answer that, smarty pants. Here's the deal. Let's look at that a little bit more. I do not consider Trois to be a worker placement game at all. In fact, I am tempted to go on Board Game Geek right now and edit the database to take that off because it's not a worker placement game. Not even remotely. You do not place workers and then recall them later and put them in other spots. You put meeples on spaces to permanently unlock abilities and then they never move. And then also you also have an area control game where meeples get put on spaces but then they get slid out in a kind of little battle for dominance. Neither of those things are worker placement. So one, of the five you're mentioning, we've just lost one. Okay, so let's talk about the other four, because I think Agricola obviously is a worker placement game. And as I have said many times, Agricola is at best a so-so worker placement game. There is nothing great about the worker placement there. Agricola is in my top 10 games of all time, and it would continue to be, even if it was not a worker placement game. It's because of the cards. It's because they give you, well, the way we play, 21 cards. Is that right? 14 cards? Yeah, 14 and 14. So is it 28 cards? No, I don't remember, but we get a whole bunch of cards of the, what is it? Do we get 9 and 9? Is it 18 cards? Now I'd have to look it up. But basically you get dealt a whole bunch of cards and you narrow it down to the 7 you're going to keep from the, yeah, I think it's maybe 28. I want to say 21, but that's not right. But you have a big pool of cards, you have to narrow it down, and in doing that, you have made a plan for your entire game. Then you play a worker placement game and see how well the plan comes out. There are a million other games that could be played under those same circumstances, and I would find it just as compelling. It's building that plan right from the get-go based on imperfect combinations you can create and then making that play out over the course of the game. Agricola is one of the most strategic games on the market. There's almost zero random chance to it. Those are the things that make it special. It's not on my list because it's a worker placement game. If it were a card drafting game or an action selection game, it would still be my top 10. Keyflower is barely a worker placement. It is a worker placement game, but it's a worker placement game fused with auctions. If the auctions weren't there and it were just a worker placement game, it would not be. Basically, it is a worker placement game where you use your workers as tokens in an auction. And that is so brilliant. It's the auction that puts it in my top 10. If the auction were gone, it would not be in my top 10. It'd still be a solid 8 game, but no. All right, Dungeon Pets is a worker placement game, but it is not the worker placement that is special about that game. It's everything that happens before. It is the assignment of workers into work groups, then the simultaneous reveal, and then that's what makes the game special. And then the worker placement is kind of fait accompli. It's okay, once we've both revealed, okay, we know how this is going to work out. It's saying blah, 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 blah. The worker placement is fine. Who cares? Whatever. And then the other thing that makes it special is the fact that those pets you are raising have a life of their own, and they surprise you and they confound you. And it's like you're interacting with a living thing. Those are the things that make it in my top 10 of all time. Has nothing to do with the worker placement, which is fine. And then finally, Angie Empire is a brilliant worker placement game. I would say it is the only of those 5 games that actually makes it into my top 20 based on the strength of the actual worker placement. It's the worker placement system that is so good. The fact that a worker, when placed, not only activates the zone you're in, but ancillary personal zones that you have built up over time. And so you have this kind of entanglement between your own personal tableau and the communal board. That's what makes it special, and that is the worker placement. So of the 5 games you've said, only one of them rates so highly for me because of the worker placement. And that means 4 games, I could take or leave the worker placement, because worker placement, as I always say, is not one of my favorite mechanisms. Right, fight me. Okay. And then Gerald says, Century Golem drafting, or Century Golem, or Century Spice Road, depending on which version you get, which is a card drafting game, combined with an Endless World, or what was it called? I can't remember the Spice version of it, which is a worker placement game. Combining the card drafting and the worker placement of those 2 games, which is the whole point of the Century series, seems very similar to Lords of Waterdeep, i.e., place workers, convert this to that, as well as new cards, buildings steadily appearing. To play, does it feel like a light Lords of Waterdeep, or does it give you a different enough experience? That's a good question. And you have me at a bit of a disadvantage, because since I have played those 2 things together, I have probably played 100 other games, and I don't remember the exact particulars. So I'm really stretching. If I recall correctly, one thing that would make Lords of Waterdeep still very, very different is, several things. Lords of Waterdeep slowly builds more worker placement spots over the course of the game, Kalis style. If I recall correctly, the combining Century games does not do that. You have a fixed worker placement board. Let's see, another thing. Lords of Waterdeep is very recipe focused. I don't think Endless... No. We'll give that to Century. That's the kind of same thing there. But there's the thing that more than anything else makes Lords of Waterdeep special, which very sadly only happens if you play with more than 2 players. It doesn't work in a 2-player game. Are the intrigue cards where it says, hey, I get something really nice and I pick another human player around the table to get something that's okay. That one system is what makes me rate Lords of Waterdeep. I think, is it in my top 100 games? That's a good question. Let's find out. Let's go to games.rahdo.com. Alrighty, and let's do a search for Waterdeep. Waterdeep is my number 95 game of all time. It's an 8.555. It is not the worker placement that puts it in there. It is not the high fantasy Game of Thrones Tolkien setting, which is very nice and very appreciated. It's those intrigue cards, and specifically the intrigue card. It's the amount of time I played a lot of Lords of Waterdeep, because it's a great gateway game, depending on how you define gateway games, as per the earlier question, with my coworkers in the video game industry, and I believe it did a pretty good job of converting some of them. And so I got to play it at higher player counts more than a lot of other games, and I so love those intrigue cards where, oh, I'll give myself 3 clerics and somebody, who's it gonna be, gets 1. Oh man, I love that. That is so great. Just that one simple thing, I want to see that in every game. Although sadly, it's something that won't ever really work particularly well in a 2-player game. But anyway, yeah. So just that in and of itself. And the intrigue cards in general, I think make Lords of Waterdeep stand on its own, away from the other one. I would have to go look because, what happens? There were some very, very cool things that happened depending on how you combined the different Century games, though. And I think, if I recall correctly, this particular connection turned the card drafting into multi-use cards, which they aren't normally. And I remember that being really amazing, if I'm remembering correctly. And if I'm remembering that correctly, I think this way of drafting plus worker placement was maybe my favorite way of the different combinations you could play. And I think it was because of the multi-use cards. And of course, Lords of Waterdeep doesn't have anything like that. And again, I'm having to go for a really flimsy memory here, but I think with that in mind, they stand on their own. Good question, though. Okay, and then finally, last one. Chris says, hello. Alrighty. Oh, right. And you already had a sport-related question that'll happen in the personal Q&A section, but his gaming-related question was buried in here somewhere, as I recall. Right. Find place something I can. However, I recently found myself increasing. Okay. Oh, shoot! No, this is a personal question. Oh, drat. Right, so he had the sports question, which ironically really should have been in the games because it was ultimately about sports and gaming. So I should have answered that one here, and I should have answered the music one in the personal question, my predilection for music analysis channels on YouTube. And you know what, Chris, I do have something to say about that, but I'm sorry, man, you're going to have to wait till next week. Yours will be the first question, or not next week, next month, in the next episode of the podcast, because I'll save this and I'll talk about it then. Because obviously this is not a game-related question. I got the two things mixed up. Apologies for that. And phew. Okay, folks, that was it for, what do you call it? Not all. We're not done with the games. Jen's going to be here. We got a couple more questions that Jen will be able to weigh in on related to games, and then we'll get to the personal stuff. So hold on. We'll be right back, and I will not be alone. Okay, everybody, welcome back. It's now time for a few more game-related questions that Jen might pipe in, which means it's Jen! If you're actually watching this on YouTube instead of listening as a podcast, you can see a disembodied right arm just barely coming into frame because, as always, Jen would prefer to be off camera. And so that's all you get. And just to prove for the people who are listening, hi, Honey Pie. Hey, that was perfectly timed.
Hi. I just had a big sip of my tea.
Yes, what tea do we have today?
Oh, today.
In this lovely green mug that you're very fond of.
I just bought that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I bought it. It's from the same artist that I bought from like 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe even 8 years ago when I came to Portland for a glass convention.
Yeah.
And I bought some stuff at the Portland Art Gallery or museum or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I haven't had this mug for a long time because it broke.
Oh.
But I bought it, and then I was caressing it one evening while we were watching a show, and I could totally tell. I was having this
sense memory.
Yes.
Sense memory, I believe, is the term.
Yep. I mean, even the way the ceramics sounds when you touch it is familiar. So
I'm sorry, what flavor was this?
It's called Peppermint Peak by Celestial Seasonings.
That's nice.
It's very nice.
But we're not into the personal stuff yet. That was a lot of personal stuff, and we're still supposed to be on games. So we can come back to that. We can revisit the mug in a moment, because I'm sure you're not done.
The tea is very important, because you don't need sugar for this one.
Oh, well, okay.
So that's nice.
Peppermint Patty doesn't need...
Peppermint Peak.
Peppermint Peak from Celestial Seasonings does not need sugar, and it's pretty good.
And no cream or anything. It's just great as is.
Okay, but anyway, we're now going to continue with the gaming questions. And you remember last month there was the guy named Top who wrote us and said, yeah, I don't actually listen to the answers to these questions for like a year, so you're a time traveler and stuff.
Yep.
And he had a really long question about playing Dominion with his kids and all of that, and should be playing.
Yeah.
Here's the deal: we got through his very, very long email, getting into his questions, and only got about halfway through them. And
what did we go off?
Yeah, we got about how would you play Dominion these days, and how do you feel about selecting Dominion sets, and we talked about that, and then I just completely skipped the second half of the thing. So we're going to continue. Top has had to wait even longer for these answers, but Top continued. He mentions playing to win, and while he does everything within the rules to win, he genuinely dislikes gaming other people, which is why he hates trader mechanisms in social deduction games. Also doesn't want to win because his opponents fail to notice something or make a silly mistake. And then he gives some examples of playing Dominion with his kids, helping them by showing, look, here's how many province cards there are still. You might want to pay attention to that, instead of just keeping that secret and safe only to himself.
So he's awesome like you are.
You're awesome too, Honey Pie. He always allows people to take back their moves, even if technically that could be a cheat. He doesn't play with people who care enough to cheat, is the way he looks at it. And sometimes when someone is trying to figure out their optimal move, if everyone else has finished their calculations, everyone will help with the person who's still trying to work it out based on public information. Or sometimes if somebody does something suboptimal, they'll suggest an alternative. Alrighty. So the question is, how do we feel about these practices? Obviously, you wouldn't want to do any of this if playing with somebody who doesn't like it. But in Top's game group, while we each try our hardest to win, we also enjoy the shared experience and the analysis. What do you think of that, Honey Pie?
I think that sounds awesome. I would like to game with you, Top.
I think, yes, we would very much enjoy your group because you just described everything we do. We do all of that stuff.
Yep.
It is. I think it's natural for me. It has been a learning process for Jen.
Yes, I have been known to cackle evilly to myself when he doesn't notice a really obvious thing.
But I don't think that happens much anymore, right? Would you say?
No, I think I'm much better.
Yeah. And if she spots something and she sees, well, boy, he just clearly doesn't realize he's about to step in it, she will point out, you're about to step in it, and then I will promptly go and step in something else, more than likely. And she can only help me so much. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big part of the games is, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to turn it off because I'm always articulating my moves anyway for filming that I end up tending to do it in real life as well. And, and if Jen's just sitting there thinking quietly, I can't help myself. But, well, if you do this, yes, I know. I thought about that 5 minutes ago. Where have you been? Yeah. You can tell how the game's going if how open she is to my very surface level analysis while she's still, like 10 layers deep. Have you thought about getting another worker? Yes, I've thought about it. But no, yeah, we totally play that way. And it sounds like we'd be very simpatico with you and your group. Alrighty, Top continues that he mentions disliking gaming other people, but it's patently untrue. Top has just admitted he's a liar. He does enjoy the aspect in multiplayer games where you're trying to convince other players not to attack you because your opponents are doing so much better, while in secret you're doing better than it appears. How about you?
That is totally you all over the place.
What do you mean?
You are such the king of misdirection.
I was going to say
meaning throwing me under the bus. He is the king of throwing me under the bus. Yeah. Okay, I think the truth has come out. Thank you, Top, for asking a good question.
It is true that when on the rare opportunities when Jen and I are playing a competitive game with other folks, I do have a tendency to point out to the table, everybody see how well Jen is doing.
Oh, and then before we even start the game, he just sits everybody down and he says, you know what? Let me just say that right up front, Jen's going to win.
Yeah, just so you know, let's just set the record straight so no one has any false expectations about how this is going to play out. Now, honey.
Yes.
Do I tend to be proven wrong in these assertions?
Always.
Really? I don't
100%.
think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I think you do tend to. But it's true. I do tend to paint a target on Jen's back. In part because I do just want people to understand they are sitting down playing with a shark.
I'm not a shark.
I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, sharks are an important part of the ecosystem. And the baby sharks like the sharks. So, but yeah, Jen's very, very good. And I mean, honestly, even if Jen wasn't, I might do it anyway, because back a million years ago when I first started getting into board gaming, I was still working full-time at Splash Damage, and we would play a lot of Small World at lunch. That was my superpower, convincing everybody that I was no threat whatsoever. Because, of course, scores are secret. And look, I'm going to go on the board. Clearly, I'm of no great concern trying to allow them to forget that 3 rounds ago, I had a really big round kind of thing. And pointing out always just what's on the surface. And I was able to get away with it on the regular. It is, I may not be good with the strategery, but I am good with the psychological warfare.
The mind gamery.
The mind gamery. I don't know why that is, but I just go there instinctually. Which is something you should bear in mind if you ever do sit down and play a game with me. I will tend to do that. Don't trust me any farther than you can throw me. Righty. And continuing, Top says, I know you prefer to play 2-player, but if you were to play a game with several players, do you enjoy social deduction games with traders? Honey, how do you feel? Do you even know what that means? I don't know if you've ever even played one.
Oh, well, that game that we played with, I can't remember the name, but it was a Potter game, and we had to figure out who the trader was, and we were in a
I don't think you played, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it was basically
you were the traitor.
It was basically a variant of Secret Hitler called Secret Voldemort.
There we go.
Because I don't think we'd want to play Secret Hitler, but Harry Potter style. And yes, I was. It turns out I and Karthik, we were the 2 traitors of the group. And the first thing I did when it came around to me and people started pointing the finger at me or asking questions I had to answer, I immediately threw Karthik my co-conspirator under the bus so that I could get the total and complete trust of the entire table. And I'm sorry, Karthik, if you're listening to this, I pretty much ruined the entire, because it was like first round. I just completely destroyed him. I forget the particulars of how the mechanisms worked. And it worked. Everybody believed me. And I almost pulled off a win. I was so close. But I forget, there were maybe a couple people who were a little suspicious of me. But for the most part, I had the table. I just couldn't quite get them to vote in the direction I needed them to vote. So what was your thought about that experience, Honey Pie? I don't recall you liking it at all.
No, I didn't care for it. I don't particularly like being faced with the fact that maybe I'm not as good a personality figure outer as I would like to.
Okay.
And I don't like feeling... Well, I don't like feeling stupid.
Yeah. And
also, I don't like feeling that my trust has been misplaced.
Okay.
So it's not a very happy game style for me.
All right. Well, that was the question. And I've very rarely gotten to play them. I mean, we did that one when we were at Essen. I played Deception and Murder in Hong Kong when I appeared on the game marathon for Dice Tower many, many years ago. And that didn't go very well, but that's because I got a really bad draw. I was the murderer, but it was the way the cards came out. It was so immediately obvious right from the get-go that everybody knew it, and there was nothing. Everybody agreed there was nothing I could have done to try to throw them off the track, because it was just so incredibly. There's only one thing that these cards can mean. So I haven't really gotten to play them much, and I don't think I'm necessarily seeking it out. But I think I'm pretty good at it. But it's not like I'm just dying jonesing to get more. I would much rather just sit and tend my little cardboard garden wherever possible. That would be my preference. And the same for you, obviously.
Yeah, but what like code names? Is that kind of like playing a trader game?
No, there is deduction there, but no, there's no traders in code names.
Well, what about like those Sherlock Holmes games and stuff where I'm always running around and you're trying to catch me?
Well, no, it's known that you are Mr. X or Dracula or whoever, and it is your job to hide from us. This is a case where it's literally social deduction, because one or more of us is not who they say they are, and we have to figure it out.
Yep. Okay.
And so, yeah, neither of us have ever played werewolf or any of those types, so I imagine I'd do okay, but I'm not actively seeking it out. Top continues to wonder, suppose that I'm not doing Rahdo anymore and just playing board games for fun. Honey Pie, do you think that we would deconstruct or analyze game experiences after we're done playing? Would we discuss the games at all, if only to reminisce? Hey, do you remember when? So if it were not an actual job, and it's now a job for Jen more than ever, because we just started a new Patreon backer-only show called Jen Jogs, where she actually ranks all the games we play over the preceding month. So she's having to really get analytical more so than ever before. How do you feel about that, Honey Pie? You've done one episode so far.
Yeah. Well, it was a little hard because it was the first one, and we were kind of figuring out the rating systems and stuff. It wasn't too bad, because actually we do go through that kind of analysis fairly frequently. So no, I think I wouldn't. There's no way in hell, in goodness sakes, that I would do that if you weren't there to help me and prompt me and all.
All right, well, no, that's the show. Do you believe if you were at a convention playing with people and there was no obligation, I wasn't anywhere to be seen, there was no obligation to evaluate the game or, kind of break it down and what's it like and, how did this mechanism work? Do you have any interest in that at all? Or, no, I'm just here to play the game and then move on.
I think actually I do already do it, because I can remember like playing some games with Leva when we'd go out and have a break.
Go on.
And one of them in particular is this marble game. Do you remember the marble game where they were all rolling down?
Potion Explosion, I believe, is the name of the game.
Okay, yep. And he wasn't even there.
I was not, yes.
And yeah, we talked about that and we deconstructed it and figured it out, So no, I think it's just part of the gaming experience, actually.
Okay.
Just figuring out what it was that you liked or didn't like about a game. You
didn't do that just because it was Leva and Leva was trying to decide if she would buy the game. Is that why you did it? Would you have done it if you were at her house?
Well, I don't know. I think there's a bit of social stigmatism about tearing down somebody's game collection. So I might not do it at somebody's house, but I would probably do it in the car with you on the way home.
So I'm trying to look for a break in this, but you're saying there's a recurring pattern that at this point you actively want to discuss gameplay mechanisms as a result of playing the game.
Yep, I guess so.
I'm really surprised by that. That was not what I was expecting you were going to say.
Oh, good. Well, 30 years of blissful marriage, and I can still surprise you.
Yes. Would you say, I mean, this hasn't always been the case. I don't believe this was the case when we first started getting into games. You had no interest in analyzing Pandemic or Agricola or Dominion or all the games we started out with. You would just say, oh, I liked it or I didn't like it, and that was it.
Yeah, I guess it's, again, your influence on me, trying to help me drill down on things.
Well, the question is, if Rahdo is not forcing you into that situation, do you think you would drop off from that and just go back to... I mean, we watch TV shows and we never analyze or deconstruct those.
We watch a lot of TV shows.
We play a lot of games.
I don't know.
All right. Don't know. But for now, she's going to stick with it. Okay, Top continues. Having recently received the Fresco Megabox.
Oh, have we?
We don't have the Megabox. We have all the individual. We do have a new expansion for it, which need to be playing pretty soon. But anyway, he points out one rule in one of the expansions was rewritten in the Megabox edition. It's extremely unclear what to do. Stay with the original rule or go with the new rule? What would you do? The designers don't appear to frequent Board Game Geek, and I doubt this can be resolved authoritatively, says Top. Though, one can imagine passionate players would argue both sides. There's a number of wrinkles. Why would the rules be rewritten if the designers hadn't specifically intended a rule change? Is it a translation error? New version of the rules is poorly written, contradictory, and oddly redundant. And finally, Top doesn't speak German, but it appears the German version of the rules have not changed. And Google Translate suggests that it matches the original. I think you've nailed it there then. This is clearly a mistranslation. All right. Oh, and then you've actually gone on ahead and given us the rule. Alrighty, so it's from the portraits. All right, portraits. If you remember Fresco, Honey Pie, portraits are in the bottom right corner. They're one of the things you can do to make money. By default, you can just make money. But if you turn portraits on, then they're special. And you can say, oh, I'm going to do a portrait of this particular person because they have effects, rather than just getting flat cash. Okay. And I think if all of them are gone by the time you paint, then you just get the flat cash. So, an active player may take one of the two... Yeah, that's right, there's two of them. One of the two portrait cards on the open display for one of their apprentices at the studio. For each of the other apprentices at the studio, they're paid $3. If both portraits have been painted... the player can only be paid $3. This is mostly straightforward, though I wish there's or in the Megabox version, for each apprentice, the player may take one of the portraits and apply in addition to being paid. No, that's wrong. Oh my gosh, that is terribly wrong. I can't believe that. So apparently they changed. Oh, not only do you get the portrait, but you get the money as well. That sounds broken to me. And like I said, if it hasn't changed in the German, I would say stick with the original rules. That doesn't sound right at all. And as you said, apparently there are other translation errors or poor wordings and whatnot. Alrighty. So as you wrote in the Kickstarter comments, the first sentence appears to intentionally change the rules. The second sentence then contradicts the first. What also appears to... Right, so it's got to be a bad translation. Alrighty, so... I don't think you have anything to say about that. Nope. So that one just kind of snuck in because you did have stuff to say about the other one. So that's it from Top. Top will be back with some non-game related questions in the next section. But now we are going to move on to Scott, who says, bad components that affect gameplay are a problem. But, honey, yes, do we care about nicer components? Do we even play a game enough to enjoy better components? Asks Scott.
Do we not have really nice components that I make and we play with anyway? So it doesn't really matter.
There's that, yes. We often play with homemade components that are better than anything the publisher can generate. So that's something to consider.
Right. Do I care about... Yes, I do. I do care about components.
Right. The real question is, does it make you enjoy the game more? All other things being equal, nothing else changes. If you've got really nice, beautiful art, you will implicitly enjoy the game more.
I will.
Right. And I think I will too. And I know I shouldn't. I should be above all that, but it's just human nature to like beautiful things. So, I mean, anything is improved if it's a beautiful thing, quite frankly. That's just human nature. That's how we comport our lives in so many different ways. So, anyway, do you have anything more to say on that?
Nope.
All right. And that's it for the end of the game questions. Although before we go, Scott has a shout out for Layla's 14th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
There's Layla. If you're watching the show on YouTube, you can see it. If not, you can go to dogs.rahdo.com. Layla with a little party hat out in a field and looking great at 14.
What a cutie.
He is an oldie. And it looks like he got in some trouble. That was later that day that he came back a little worse for wear.
Look at his paws. His
Yeah, the paws and the snoot are filthy. And he's lost the hat somewhere along the way. Or she's lost that. She was the run of the litter and born deaf. Which to Scott just means she doesn't bark unless she's hungry. She has bad arthritis, but is a happy dog otherwise, a border collie, and she is adorable. Thank you for sharing. There was actually a dog in the game, the other game stuff, so let me just jump back to that really quick. Where was it? It was Nigel. Everybody, it's we get a monthly update on Charlie, who we've seen several times, but Charlie is now here with his new sister Sky. Although we don't see Sky yet. That's Charlie. Those are some happy golden retrievers. Some of the happiest looking dogs you will ever see.
I know. Actually, pit bulls have that big old smile.
Yeah, that's just kind of welded on their face.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
How lovely.
Yep. Thank you for the pictures, Nigel.
Now, are they actually sister and brother, or are you just saying sister because,
Nigel did not specify. See attached pictures of Charlie with new sister Sky. I'm going to assume they are not related.
Same.
It could be. That's probably a bit of a stretch. But folks, that was it for the gaming related stuff. So if you were just here for games, we are done, and say thank you very much for watching or listening. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye. But if you'd like to have some personal stuff other than what tea Jen is drinking, hang on for a bit. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, we are back. It's time for the personal questions and answers. Jen is continuing to knit. For folks on camera who would like to see evidence of knitting, proof of knitting.
I just started a new line.
Can you not reach? There you go. So that's all you get. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
All right. So Jen's going to continue to knit. She's going to continue to sip her mint something or other tea that is sugar-free from and we're going back to Top, because Top was not done yet. Some non-board game questions, starting with Top notices that I've mentioned liking Rick and Morty. Jen does not, as an aside. Coincidentally, Top's just discovered the show shortly before my mention, and it's probably one of Top's favorite cartoons of all time. Top, I like you more all the time. We want to play games with you, would like to watch cartoons with you, but continuing, Top says that for him, this and 3 other cartoons are head and shoulders better than any other cartoon Top's seen. Although he does like others as well. He was curious if I've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, Gravity Falls, and Bob's Burgers. I have not seen any of those. I mean, I feel like I should watch Avatar: The Last Airbender just because of its cultural significance. It's such a big, huge deal. But I don't know, I fell out of love with anime a long, long time ago. And about the only anime I'm interested in at this point is if there's a new Miyazaki Studios film. And I don't know, has there been one for a while? Or didn't he retire for a bit, but then he's coming back? I don't remember. But yeah, I did watch a little bit of, what is it called? Attack on Titan, right after we played the game Attack on Titan, because that was really interesting. And I was like, yeah, I just don't know. It just does. And Netflix is putting out tons of, I mean, apparently the Castlevania anime is really good and all that, but they just don't capture my attention in the way they did when I was in my early 20s. Oh, and of course, as a kid, growing up on Speed Racer and Star Blazers and whatnot. Gravity Falls and Bob's Burgers, I've always kind of meant to watch those, especially Bob's Burgers, because I do relatively regularly watch the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, and I know he's a recurring character on Bob's Burgers, so that'd be interesting. But no, just never got to him. Stopped watching Simpsons a long time ago, never got into Family Guy. I mean, there are a lot of cartoons I watch. I'm sure I mentioned it before, Archer and whatnot. And, oh gosh, there was just, what's the new one that we were watching for a little bit? And Jen we were watching it, it was set in Alaska. Can't think of it.
Yeah.
It's from the same team as Bob's Burgers. We watched together we watched like 3 episodes. Yeah, this is nice, but there's just no reason to keep going. So, I'm sorry to say, Top, I thought we were completely simpatico, but this is where we part ways, I'm afraid. Alrighty. But then Top does wonder, do I have any favorites that I would recommend? Ooh, yes. Well, I mean, if you like Rick and Morty, you have to check out Solar Opposites, which is from one of the co-creators and co-studio heads of Rick and Morty, and there's a lot of overlap. They could even be set in the same universe. And it started out a little slow, but oh my gosh, by the end of the first season, it does so many amazing far-out things. It's absolutely incredible. And it has that same very irreverent and borderline psychotic humor that Rick and Morty does. It's really, really great. I really love Archer. What else? What else? Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure Jen can't think of any cartoons. Let's see. If I were to bring up a web browser and do a quick search. Actually, hold on a second. I don't have to do a hidden search. I was going to look through all the TV shows I watch on nextepisode.net, but that's a long, long list, and I'm not signed in anyway. So if I just do popular prime time cartoons, I'm sure Google will give me, right. Oh, of course, Futurama, obviously. C-Lab, never watched C-Lab 2021. Yeah, most of the, right. I thought Google was just going to give me a nice little, nope. All right, that's primetime word. List of American primetime animated series from Wikipedia. Let's go with that. Okay. And let's jump to the now and then go back. Oh my gosh. All right. Oh, The Great North. Top, you should check out The Great North. You probably already have, because if you love Bob's Burger, I'm sure you'll love it too. Oh, Duncanville. Is that what I'm thinking of? No. I have not seen Duncanville, but there is another one. That reminds me. Let's see if it comes up on this list. Bob's Burgers, bless the heart, Axe Cop, nope. All right, this is far, far, far from a thorough list. Shoot. But it does pop one into my head that stars one of the contributors on the old Jon Stewart Daily Show about a couple of guys who were sort of losers, and they were like childhood detectives, and they grew up to be adult detectives still solving the mysteries that kids would solve. Oh, I can't think of the name of it now, but it's really good.
Scooby-Doo?
No. Nope, that would be a completely different thing.
That's kind of similar.
Yeah. It's in the same wheelhouse. Wow, this is a terrible list. This isn't very good at all. All right, John Hodgman. All right, IMDb, John Hodgman, or something like that. I forget what channel it's on, AMC or FX or something like that. Dicktown, because that's actually, I believe it's the name of the town that they live in, the mystery of the president's physician, the impossible car, the mystery of the moaning ghost, and it's really just these, it's a great chemistry between the two leads as they go around and try to solve mysteries that aren't really mysteries. It's very, very good. Really like that one a lot as well. Yeah, I had thought I would get a better list. All right, so now if I go on ahead and sign into Next Episode, which is a great website, by the way, one of the ones I actually pay for, because it tells you all the shows that are on today, and it also tells you all new shows that are popping up that, in case you haven't missed it, but only for like the first season, and if you never sign up for it, it makes it go away, so it's not like a list of all 500 new episodes every day, but just the newly new stuff. It's a great website. I really like it a lot. And, but I've got it in a small window, so it's not showing me my list of all the shows I've got. So I've got to go full screen, and then the side thing comes up. Wait, actually, can't I search? You know what, Top? Ask me again 6 months from now, and I'll be more on the spot, ready to talk about this. Alrighty, I was not prepared. But try out Dicktown and Archer and Solar Opposite. You gave me 3; those are 3 for you. Plus, whatever it was, The Great North. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna love that one. Alrighty. Continuing on, Top seems to recall that I explained why I don't play video games anymore. Top thinks it was because I know so much about how the sausage is made that I'd be dissecting the design of them and I wouldn't enjoy myself. Is that it? That's part of it. That was kind of leading to burnout, that I couldn't just enjoy a game. I don't know that would still be the case anymore, because I've been out of the video game industry for over a decade now, so I have no reason to dissect games, but I still have no desire to go back and play them. Anytime I'm spending playing a video game, it would be better spent playing a board game with her. It will just be more fun. It's just efficient use of time, which is what board games teach us, if nothing else. For a very brief moment, I kind of thought, maybe I'll get into VR gaming when we got the Oculus Quest.
Yeah.
But it turns out we just use that for exercise. Supernatural is fantastic, and I do like Pistol Whip, but really mostly for the exercise. I don't know if I'd play it if it didn't really give me a good workout. I did play through that Darth Vader thing, and that was really, really cool, but I didn't really enjoy it as a game, more as just a multimedia experience that I was in. I was in a Star Wars film. That was pretty cool. But no, I just have a hard time enjoying them. They seem like they just seem like an empty way to spend time. And of course they're not. I don't mean to disparage them or anything like that. Of course, I spent a sizable portion of my life playing them, but it is so inferior as an experience to something that I can share with Jen, stopping and thinking and not just twitching and reacting. So yeah, at this point, I don't think it's the dissection anymore. That kind of contributed to me getting burned out, but now I just can't bring myself to go back at all. Alrighty. Top continues. Is part of my version of playing video game. Honey, you used to play video games. Why do you not play video games? Why do you not have, I mean, so many people have apps on their phones that they play, little offshoots of Dr. Mario and Gemblow and stuff like that. I mean, why don't you have any games like that on your phone that you'll play when you've just got a few minutes to kill?
Because I've got other things to do when I've got a few minutes to kill.
Mm-hmm. And games just aren't good enough. Video games aren't good enough a way to spend those few minutes.
I don't know. For a while there, I was doing, Luminosity, which is mind game.
Oh, yes, I remember you doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that. I think I just don't have anything on my phone right now, so I don't do it.
Okay.
I guess I check Instagram or something instead.
Mm-hmm. And you find that more compelling than matching gems or completing patterns or...
Yeah, I guess so.
Yep. All right. Yeah, we're just over it. We're old.
Hey, I got carded today.
Yep. Yeah, Jen got carded.
Woohoo!
She was very, very happy about that.
I was at Target.
Yep.
And I got myself some margarita mix, and the lady said, "May I see your ID?"
And you said, you realize, looking at the ID, I'm over 50 years old. And what did the lady say?
Keep doing what you're doing.
And Jen walked out of there with a spring in her step. Alrighty. Video games have evolved a lot since my designing days. Am I curious how they've changed? Or am I intentionally limiting my involvement because they can be such a time sink? No, it really just comes down to, I mean, there have been a few games I've gone back to try. I remember a few years ago, I did a top 10 video games, and that immediately got a whole bunch of people saying, oh, Rahdo, you got to try this and this and this. If you like those, these are the same, but even better. And I think the only thing that came out of that brief window of experimenting was both Jen and I agreed, oh, this, what was it? Stop Talking or Everyone Explodes, which is really a board game at its heart. One player's playing a board game and one player's playing a very simple video game. And we kind of like that, but not enough to keep going at it. Remember, you had on your laptop, you were defusing a bomb, and I had an actual manual, and you'd have to say, there's 4 buttons, what do I push? And I'd have to, well, which of them are green? None of them are green, that kind of thing. Yeah, and that was neat, but not enough to keep us coming back. Or, I don't know, I guess we'd play it again, but we played it a couple times and then just moved on.
Yeah.
Heck, I just played, I just did a top 10 for Pandemic, and to get some B-roll, it cost me $10, so I bought the Pandemic Windows game, and I was like, okay, this is nice, but I'm just going to play this long enough to be able to put the video in my top 10, and I'm not going to continue playing it. I thought maybe I would, but it just didn't grab me. I want to touch things. I want to hold things. I want to move things. Human beings are tactile creatures. I mean, for the longest time, I remember... there was a time when remote controls kind of went through this big paradigm shift where, remote controls are now going to have no buttons. They're all screens with programmable buttons. It's so great. And I hated those because you can't feel the buttons. And I wanted to feel the buttons. I think they've stopped pushing in that direction now, which is good. But yeah, I mean, human beings want to touch things, feel things, be connected to things. And video games can't let you do that. No amount of force feedback in the world or haptics or what have you will... replace picking up a worker and putting it down somewhere. That said, I probably should try board games in VR. That might be interesting, but I just can't be bothered. Alrighty, so Top's not done with the video games though. Do you have anything to say about that, Honey Pie?
Nope.
No. Some video games have a strong narrative aspect and minimize the gameplay parts. These are known as walking simulators. Had not heard that. Do you think you would enjoy these? No. Gone Home is an example. Honestly, I think I would enjoy those even less because... I mean, no offense to my former video game developer compatriots, the storytelling in my experience for video games is not all that. And if anything, I find more and more that TV and movies are kind of skewing towards video game level storytelling. I'm talking about The Mandalorian. I'm talking about Rise of Skywalker, potentially. But I've noticed this on other things as well. It's like, wow, this really feels like a video game plot. And so I don't know. Maybe things are turning around. Maybe video games have flipped the script, and now they're the ones, and popular media is becoming more shallow. But no, I mean, at some point I should play. I know the Walking Dead stuff is supposedly really amazing, and I used to love The Walking Dead, but I just can't. I'm sorry, Top. You're not convincing me. I can't do it. But you're not done. Some video games are mostly clever puzzles, like the Room series. Do you think you would enjoy these? Some games, like the Talos Principle, combine puzzles, narrative, and philosophical aspects. Honey Pie, would you want to play a video game version of an escape room? There are a lot of them, actually, which I assume the Room series is. I mean, and I know there's ones for VR as well, so you could really feel like you're there.
I'd give it a try, but I don't think it would be... Well, I don't know. I would give it a try. But we find those frustrating anyway because they have to have some little twisty thing to make it harder. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's kind of like, well, of course Sherlock Holmes knows everything because the author is writing him. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I feel about escape rooms.
Really? See, that's surprising because I was burned out on escape room, board game versions of escape rooms. And I thought Jen was too, but then we played, The Initiative last month, and Jen was like, oh my gosh, this is great, I love all this cipher code cracking stuff. And you were really into it, and I'm like, oh, does that mean you want to go back to escape rooms then? But, what?
That was the best part of that.
Yeah, no, I'm putting aside the gameplay. You were just really digging the puzzles.
Yeah, I like to figure things out.
Uh-huh. So does that mean you want to play more? I mean, because board game escape rooms have not stopped coming out. And I've just gotten to the point where I just keep telling publishers, please stop sending them to us. We don't want them anymore. Should I not be doing that? Do you want them? I kind of thought, but then I was really surprised that you were digging those code ciphers. Well, it's interesting. When I did my final thoughts with Shea, because he was talking about how, to him, Initiative feels more like an escape room because it doesn't try to couch the experience of, oh no, you're not solving puzzles. You're here investigating a story and there's a narrative and we kind of hide the puzzles and obfuscate them. And she was like, oh, this is so nice just to have the puzzle right there. It's literally right there. All we have to do is solve this puzzle by find this pattern or what have you. And I wonder if maybe, did you find that more attractive than the escape rooms we've kind of started getting burned out on? Because there's no obfuscation. There's no, oh, look, we're trying to cleverly hide it and you have to think outside the box for this thing. It's like, no, it's a code breaking puzzle. Break the code or don't.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, all right. Finally, we get to the end of Top's email, where he points out that lots of AAA games have extended cutscenes. Some folks on YouTube have put together videos containing all the cutscenes plus the relevant character dialogue. Do you think you'd be able to enjoy watching these as purely non-interactive experience? Geez, that sounds like a pretentious way of saying a movie. I think I did. I think I've watched a bit of, like, what's the really popular series from the Naughty Dog? Last of Us, I think? Is that it? I forget. Post-apocalypse guy and daughter. I think I tried watching the stuff and I just wasn't engaged. I think I even watched the final half hour, the beginning and the end. And I don't know. It maybe gets back to what you were talking about earlier. I'm just too close to it. I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours I've spent in creative meetings, trying to knock out all the beats of storytelling in Fable and Brink and Siphon Filter and all that. And I know I just see all these beats. They're like, I see them coming a mile away. Nothing ever really engages me or captures my imagination. Maybe it's just because I've done it for so many years. And maybe that's why I'm really sensitive to it. But no, that doesn't pull me in. I've even tried to be pulled in. Friends of mine who are still in the industry and their games have done really, really well. I've gone and watched videos of them and like, well, I'm really happy for them, but I just can't get excited. It's I don't know. Shouldn't be saying any of this in case I end up having to go back to work in the video game industry. But I have to fake it. But yeah, there's just nothing there for me. But I thank you for trying, Top. Okay. Phew, that was a lot. All right. Any final words on video games, Honey Pie?
Only if we get invited to do Lord of the Rings. Do you have to get excited?
Oh, if somebody contacted me to do an MMO of Lord of the Rings?
Yep.
Which that was already done, and it wasn't, well, we didn't enjoy it. It did not capture our attention. Didn't pull us away from, were we still in World of Warcraft at that point? I don't remember now. Anyway, though. Okay, then. Let's move on to Jack. And now, first of all, Jack, I need to apologize. I know you sent 2 messages. I'm going to skip the other one because I really don't want to, relitigate the events of January 6th. It's obviously still too raw, and I don't want to get into a pissing contest about, oh, which is more tragic, this or that. I just don't want to platform that, Jack. So I apologize for that. But let's go with your other one about social media bans. Because we pointed out last podcast that I've continually analogized social media platforms with people's front lawns. Not exactly. Did I do? I'm analogizing my channel, where I am in control and I feel I have a responsibility for the community that I foster with my front lawn. I think that's where I draw the analogy, but let's continue. This analogy fails to address the problem of high-profile bannings because the government privileges these platforms. For one, they're legally protected against libel lawsuits, kind of, sort of. And yeah, honestly, I think, what is it, 203 or 230? That particular clause, I think that does give them, personally, sorry, as an aside, too much leeway. It is important and what it's doing, but I do think it lets them off the hook too much. And you're right. I think social media platforms do have an unfair free ride, and it should be readdressed. The law that was written in '96 needs to be looked at again, because it's almost doing more harm than good at this point. Or at least it's not solving the problems it was set out to do, and it is allowing for some very bad behavior while also still protecting some fundamental freedoms and all of that too. But I think it does need to really be reevaluated. Alrighty. So, right. Anyway, so as you say, social media platforms are legally protected against libel lawsuits, and yet you cannot lie about people on your front lawn. You can. But, and then you continue, that if you do, they can sue you for damages. Yes, again, that's the 230 loophole, that social media platforms are not, what is it, they're publishers, they're not platform, I forget, but anyway. If your point is that social media platforms need to be more regulated, I would say yes. I don't think that's your point, though. Based on the fact that you're a very, very hardcore conservative, I believe you want less regulation, and I'm thinking there probably should be more because of the problems that are evolving and affecting our society. But anyway, right, if I do it right. So social media platforms are immune from that. Not entirely. That's a little reductive, but they are largely protected. It's true. There are some, they are actually, they can be held accountable if what they allow breaks federal law. It's state law that they are immune from, and that's a real problem. And there's a reason for it, of course, because some state law is crazy, and states can get a little carried away, whereas federal law, in theory, is a little bit more moderated in its approach. So, they can still be held accountable for certain things, but it's not all encompassing. Anyway, second, you continue, Jack, that your tax dollars don't go towards your front lawn. So, of course, actually, is that entirely true? Your tax dollars
his tax dollars don't go towards your front yard.
Well, no, he's talking about his own front lawn. He's saying, hey, if Facebook is allowed to, he's talking about allowing to ban Trump and all that.
Just read the actual
right. Second, Jack's tax dollars don't go towards, my front lawn. Oh, okay, yeah, you are continuing. Yeah, thanks, bye. So, of course, I should have no say in what you do with it. However, government officials use social media platforms. They promote them through this use, and their time spent is on the taxpayer dime. So I have no choice but to send money through my tax dollars to the likes of Jack Dorsey. I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Jack. I think that is a big stretch. By that argument, everything that a senator or a mayor does in their off time, you are supporting with your tax dollars because your tax dollars pay their salary. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that you are supporting car rental dealerships or bookstores or Amazon when they buy stuff. What they do in their personal time, whether they are a public figure or not. So I'm going to disagree with you on that, but let's continue. So no, these media platforms are not just Jack Dorsey and Zuckerberg's front lawns. They're already taxpayer-funded entities. I'm going to strongly disagree with you on that. Although, Jack, I'll give you the benefit of saying they do get a lot of ridiculous tax subsidies. You don't have to do this weird thing of, because they post on Twitter, I basically gave a fraction of a penny to Twitter. I don't stand for that, but you're right. Facebook and Amazon and all of these places get huge state-level tax subsidies by pitting cities and states against each other to open up call centers and all of that. And that's crap. That's garbage. And it's an unfortunate side effect of capitalism leaching into the public good. And it ultimately leads to more trouble than not. And good job on New York for saying no. They drew a line in the sand and said, no, we're not going to give you all of that. But anyway, still, so there's kind of a capitalism version of what you're talking about, which again, I don't think is what you're really talking about because you love capitalism, but it's really capitalism that drives those subsidies for these platforms. And it is not cool. Anyway, though, given these considerations, do I maintain that social media platforms have every right to ban anyone off their platform, including Donald Trump, who has 80 million American support? I do believe it is well within their rights to do it, particularly if they have a publicly stated code of conduct, and if you break that code of conduct, they can show you the door. I still believe that's the case, and I don't believe you made a strong enough opinion otherwise. Honey, do you have anything to say?
I think that if you're spreading lies and you're harming people, then you lose your rights.
Right. And that would be, those would be, the continued insistence of spreading a demonstrably damaging and dangerous, seditious lie is what ultimately got him kicked off those platforms. And I think they were well within their rights to do it. I believe they were morally right to do it as well. I think they should have done it a lot sooner, and more people would literally be alive today if they had. But I know you're going to disagree, and then you continue to your second question. Assuming I still maintain my position, I'm okay with Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc. banning. Oh, would I be okay with them banning Joe Biden? If he broke their code of conduct, if he broke their rules, if he was spreading lies that would lead to riots in our nation's capital, yes, I think he should definitely be banned. I think anybody should be banned who does that. Anybody. As far as I know, well, first of all, Joe Biden spends no time on social media anyway, so it's a moot point. But
he does do a little bit, although it might be his people posting.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he does a few go get 'ems, and the dogs. I don't follow it anymore. I used to follow. Was it Champ and Chief and I don't remember the dogs' names. The new one. Yeah. Scamp, whatever. I used to follow them, but. I think that's about as far as his social media presence goes. But yes, if he were fomenting lies or spreading lies that basically tear down the fundamental nature of our nation, yes, he should be banned as well. All right, and he should be banned because he would be breaking very clearly stated codes of conduct that he agreed to when he created the account. And if you don't agree with it, don't create the account in the first place.
But nobody reads all that.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, Champ and Major.
Champ and Major. All righty. I'm rooting for you, Major. You'll make it back in. You're a good dog. All righty. So, if these social media companies decided they don't want any BLM-associated messenger individual on their platform and ban them all, would I be okay with that? I would be okay with that if the platform demonstrated once again that they were breaking the rules that everybody agrees to when they get on these platforms. Again, I have no problem with them banning me if they can demonstrate that I have broken the rules that I agreed to when I created my user account. It's what it comes down to. I mean, dude, you're a conservative. You should be pro-business rights. This is a business rights issue. The business has the right to say, this is the contract I have entered in with you. If you break the terms of this contract, you are no longer allowed access to the premises. Dude, this is Wedding Cakes 2.0. I would imagine you're totally agree that people shouldn't have to make gay wedding cakes if they don't want to, correct? Same thing is going on here. Anyway, though. What if they all banned Rahdo channels on my Patreon? Then, if I feel that I did not break the rules or code of conduct, obviously I'd appeal. And if not, I'd say, oh, that's too bad for me because I'll have to take my show on the road. And that's okay. You know what? I could take my show to Vimeo. I could take my show to Dailymotion. I could take my show to a million other places. I could host the videos myself. I could use PayPal to raise funds instead of Patreon. I could go back to Kickstarter. I could just create blogs. I can create a new account with Jen's name or my name. There's nothing stopping me from doing any of this. So honestly, I don't see the problem, buddy. Anyway, though. Would I be okay with that? I would be okay with them. And again, I think you probably, I'm pro-regulation. I am pro the law being in place to prevent people from being able to yell fire in a crowded theater. And that's what we're talking about here. Nobody should have the right to do that. And if I'm doing that, I should be kicked off as well. Alrighty. And if you feel the need to report me so that I can hopefully get kicked off, By all means, yeah, there are methods for you to do that. Righty, my entire source of financing gone tomorrow because for whatever reason they decided they didn't want to mess on front lawn. No, it's not for whatever reason. Jack, buddy, it's right there in the small print that, as Jen pointed out, you and I and Trump didn't read. Read it. If you don't agree with it, don't sign on the dotted line in the first place, buddy. Again, this is standard business rights. Corporations are people, right? So they have the right to refuse service. There's nothing wrong or nefarious here. Let's see. To finalize, you ask, do social media platforms have any obligation to the people that use them to allow messaging they might not agree with on their platforms? They regular. I mean, have you looked at YouTube and Twitter and Facebook? Rest assured, all sides of every spectrum are there, in force, en masse. The vast majority of people are not being removed from the platforms. You and I are not being removed from the platforms. I do occasionally have strikes against my channel. I might get a strike depending on what audio I put on this one. But that gets back to the 230 thing that I think, the original law from 96 really focused more, again, on business rights because YouTube can be held accountable, can't be held accountable for whatever I say on my channel, but can be held accountable if I use copyright materials. So again, that was an example of government writing the law to favor business instead of humans. So I could actually do a series of videos that can destroy a person's life. Absolutely, by accusing them of things that are blatantly false, and if they try to stop me, I'll just create another account and I'll just keep doing it. There's nothing they can do to stop. And that's why I do believe that YouTube does have a responsibility if they are the platform wherein people shout fire in a crowded theater, which is why I do think 230. There are elements of it that need to be preserved, but it does need to be revisited, which I'm sure is the exact opposite of what you were looking for, or maybe not. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I signed a contract with them. If they want to cancel the contract because I'm in breach of the contract, that's how contracts work, buddy. Do you have anything to add to that, Honey Pie?
No, I think you've done it.
Okay, then. Thanks, Jack. As always, talk to you next month. Okay, Gerard says... he heard on the podcast that Jen and I would like to see some of his Lego. Remember, he talked about Lego animations that he did. He used to do. He had a channel. Yeah. Did it a few years ago. Hope you enjoy them. Yes, you can post this on the web for others to see. So let's go on ahead and open this. And alrighty. And what do we got here? The name of the video is Stolen Pepsi. I'm going to play it at double speed. And it's... All right. Oh, they're talking.
He just launched his Pepsi.
All right. And wow. Jeez Louise, that's a lot of animation.
You might as well be doing...
oh my gosh.
Everything is awesome.
Okay, it's not as good as the Lego movie, but wow. Gerard, how long did this take you? Again, I apologize for folks who are listening to the podcast, can't see this. There will be a link down in the show notes if you want to go check out Gerard's Stolen Pepsi video, which is ridiculously ambitious.
Wow.
That's very impressive. And only less than 500 views. That's not right. That's not right. Folks, go check out the link in the show notes. Go check out Stolen Pepsi by Gerard.
I can't believe Pepsi hasn't gotten a hold of you.
I know. I wouldn't be surprised if he was doing that because maybe it'll go viral and Pepsi will pay me for doing, I don't know. But no, that was very impressive. Thank you for sharing it, Gerard.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't believe you had any questions? No. Okay. Okay, then let's go back to questions with Olivier.
Go back when...
Oh, wait. You want to go back? What do you want?
You just said something. Hope you enjoyed as much as they did. Who is they?
Who?
For work.
As much as they did. Yeah. Who is they, Gerard? Who are you doing this for? Oh, he said for work. For work?
Yeah. Did you used to work for Pepsi?
I guess.
Well, okay. You got to get back to us with some more information.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Indeed. Okay. Olivier says, here's Frank West, who's a board game designer, explaining his new Not Safe for Cats expansion. April Fools. You sent this on April 1st, didn't you? Yes, you did. With hidden information in cat warfare. Olivier finds the video hilarious, and the commitment to it is great. Do Jen and I enjoy these types of April Fool pranks and shenanigans? Do you have other examples of April Fool videos like this one that come to mind? I don't know. What do you think, Honey Pie? It's 5 minutes long. I'm not going to watch it, but I'm sure it's him talking about a new exciting expansion that he's putting together. And it's one where he went so far as to actually make components for it and new cards that he's showing for turning Isle of Cats into a war game, it looks like. And he clearly put a lot of work into this. Not saying as much work as that Pepsi video, but I mean, he figured out how to do green screen to put himself on the screen. This is really amazing. Right. And you're right. Come April 1st, every year there's a bunch of these things. When I was in the video game industry, the last company I worked for, next to last, Splash Damage, we did one of these every year. Basically doing tons of art and sometimes video to talk about new games that we were announcing the launch of that were patently silly and all of that. So, with all that, Honey Pie, what are your thoughts about April Fool's stuff like that?
I think anything that makes you feel creative and gets your juices flowing is great.
Okay.
I think that's really cool. Whether I'm going to spend the time and energy to look at it and appreciate it, probably not. But I think it's awesome, and if it's probably already paid dividends for him in some way that he had no idea was going to be connected. Yeah.
2,000 views and 50 thumbs up. And were there any comments? And 15 comments. So, it did okay. It did okay by board game standards. And so, yeah. Hey, Paulo even liked it. Our Paulo. Rahdo Runs Through Paulo liked it. Alrighty. And Paulo almost bought it. Oh, because he's... do they not celebrate April Fool's Day? Is that only an American thing?
I have no idea.
I'm trying to think of it. I don't think... Was it ever a deal when we lived in England? No, of course it was, because we did it for... but as a video game company, we did it because we had an international audience and all of that. Yeah. So, what do I think about them? I think, I guess I'm going to be a little bit more gracious than I might have otherwise been after Jen's kind words and say, yeah, it's a really great exercise, lots of really interesting creative outlets, but personally I'm not interested. So, I'm afraid I do not have any good examples. Do you have any examples of April Fool's jokes that you really dug, Honey Pie?
Probably about 20 or 30 years ago, the Motley Fool did some that were pretty darn funny.
Yeah.
About, I don't know.
New investment opportunities?
New investment stuff, or, companies doing crazy stuff or whatever. I don't even remember them. I remember enjoying them, and that's about it.
Olivier had one more he wanted to share. And it's a new game from... Oh, right. Oh, this was from... yeah, I did see this. So this was Paul Grogan, who I've done videos with.
Okay, this is I did a quick Google. How April Fool's Day is celebrated in
11 countries.
Around the world. So apparently it's not just us.
All right, okay. It's weird. So I remember I did watch this one that Paul pretended that this puzzle based on a game was, it's the latest game and we're going to play it. We're going to sit down. Seems like it's a cooperative game. Any number of players can join. And, I have no rules. That's going to be a strike against it. And look at all these components. Have you ever seen this many components in a board game?
I just tasted one.
Yep.
Oh, and he's got a purple meeple, so he's awesome.
Yeah, he has purple meeple in general.
I like him.
So yeah, no, this was very cute. And I believe he actually did him and his wife. I did actually watch this because I subscribed to Paul and I really like it. And so, I don't know. Yeah, this was nice. This was sweet. This was charming. Would I have enjoyed it as much if I didn't know Paul personally in real life and consider him a friend? I don't know. I mean, if it's just like a complete stranger, I'd think, oh, yeah, that was kind of clever. But I don't think... I mean, I carry a lot of warmth for this because I really like Paul. And I'm rooting for him all the time. He's just the greatest. So... Yeah, and I believe he's actually doing voiceover, talking about their experience and how I think they treated it as a race, and she was clearly winning against him, and it was really sweet, very charming, and you're right, it was a lot of fun. I'll put links for these things as well, folks, in addition to the Pepsi commercial if you want to check out the April Fools in case you missed them. Alrighty, but we're going to move on to Tim, who, his fiancée insists that he share an older picture of Doug the cat. It's Doug Pics. Lost a bit of weight since we took this picture. Doug needed some help. As always, folks, you can check out Doug at dogs.rahdo.com.
I do wonder if Doug is plugged in. It looks like his cable.
Yeah. I'm glad he's lost some weight since then, because that was not a good place to be for Doug.
Mostly fluffy.
Yeah, you're right. It could be fluff. I don't think that's fluff. I think that's something else.
Well,
fluff.
still, look at that tum.
Yep. That's quite the tum. Very pattable. Alrighty, we're going to move on to Chris, who says hello to me and to Jen. All right, first-time emailer, and right. So, really thought my first email would be about some sort of pressing questions with seismic changes taking place in and around our planet. However, that's not going to happen. Like many, I've been forced to adopt working from home for future. It tends to be my chosen background noise. I'm curious to know if Chris's new habits are reflected in some of my streaming figures. Oh, you know what? This is a game-related question. I remember this. This is actually in the other. I think there was a non-game thing later on. Right, because again, as always, I'm doing this out of order, and I'm doing the stuff with Jen first, and then I'll get to the game stuff later.
Yeah, but you're also not reading thoroughly. So for people that are listening to this as a podcast,
they have to trust me. But they've had to trust us for...
I know, but you're reading, you're kind of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get to the question.
Okay, well, I just didn't want you to ignore your listeners in lieu of the people who could
Would you like to read the whole thing? It's very long.
No, I don't.
There you go. That's the problem. So that's why I'm just trying to get to the meat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But, I mean, okay. I don't understand.
This is not my show. But I'm just saying, if people are listening on the podcast,
yes,
you're actually not thoroughly reading, and they're probably following along going, what the hell did he say?
Oh, yeah, no. No, normally, I'm not, I wasn't assuming that they'd actually understand. I was just trying to get to where the question was. Okay. And then I was going to, all right, so basically what Chris is saying is blah, blah. That was my intention.
Okay, I apologize.
Okay, oh, no, it's fine. It's perfectly reasonable. The audience needs an advocate. All right, and it's going to be Advocate Jen. All righty. Let's see. So anyway, so you had the channel related, game related questions up top, but I remember there was some kind of right. Oh, it had to do with sports. Yes, it was down here. All right. So from older podcasts, Chris remembers I have zero interest in sports. Right. From about 2 years ago, I must have said this. So that's stuck with Chris. Through gaming, specifically board gaming, Chris finds he's ended up with a very opposite view about sports. Don't get me wrong, on one level, he does not get sports, the commercial aspects, salaries, but putting these things aside, don't I, as a viewer, with a gaming background, appreciate any of the tactics or strategies often on display? As a result of Chris's gaming hobby, he often looks beyond the activities on screen and gets drawn into the events of the dueling nature. If anything, Chris now watches a wider variety of sports as he takes in each sport's potentially hidden depths. The thing I'm trying to say is I don't like chess much, but I have a respect for what it brought to gaming. Can't dismiss it out of hand, so I feel sports can inspire design and shouldn't be overlooked. So the question is, don't I think? What do you think, Honey Pie? Should you be enjoying sports? Oh, bring on the sports ball.
No, I don't think that I'm necessarily obligated to that.
Well, but you're not professionally obligated to. I suppose this could have been a game-related question as well, but we'll leave it here. I guess both these were really kind of about the channel, because what you're saying is, well, hey, I'm a board game professional. I analyze games for a living. Would I not be better at my job if I had a finer appreciation for the tactics and strategy inherent in sports competitions? Maybe. Yes. Sure. Still don't like it. Still don't enjoy it. Still cannot get invested in it. I've watched many... Probably at this point in my life, at 52, I've probably watched hundreds of hours of sporting events over the course of my life, both in person and on TV, mostly because of other people, and I was just going along with it. Or when I was very, very young, I was trying to fit in and say, oh, all my other friends like sports, so I should try to like it too. And I faked it. Even then, I couldn't enjoy it. Even when I was playing them, I don't recall particularly enjoying it and would have rather been off shooting marbles at the end of the day as my playground activity, which I guess that's a sport too, arguably. So, I appreciate that you get deeper meaning and resonance. I'm sure it's all there, the football manager side of football. But yeah, I just can't pull myself in.
But there's things like,
yes.
What's that show that we're watching where the guy came over from America and doesn't like tea? The football.
Oh, Ted Lasso, yes.
Yeah. So...
The guy who doesn't like tea. That's what Jen clearly took away from the first season of Ted Lasso. The man does not like tea.
He doesn't like tea.
It's true. He made it was a repeated joke. Yep. It was good stuff.
But anyway, I mean, so we can enjoy sports that way.
Sure, but I mean, that entire show could take place in an office. That show could take place in a high school. That's just about coworkers. Who have been brought together by a job and trying to get through the struggles of life and overcome group activities together. And I mean, I will certainly agree. I love The Natural with Robert Redford. Mm-hmm. I'll tear up if I hear the music. When he hits the big homer and shatters the lights and all that. I mean, so there's an incredible pageantry and for sports presented in the right way. But yeah, I doff my cap. I do not begrudge anybody for their enjoyment, yourself included, but believe me, I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours I've spent, and it's just never moved me. It's just genetic at this point. Is there something about my brain chemistry that just makes me, in the same way that, I don't know, do I need to have a fundamental tribal drive because I really want to have a team to root for, and maybe I can't invest myself on that level. I don't know, but I've just never, ever, 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 ever been able to do it. And I remember as a little kid, literally faking it, pretending, so that I could fit in with the other kids, and I just never could care. And now it is true. Think about it. I did not grow up in a household. My dad did not watch sports. My mom didn't watch sports, and I wonder if that. I wonder, if because I did not have that influence in my life at a young age. But no, on the other hand, Jen grew up. Jen's dad has been a sports fiend her entire life.
Yeah, he likes. We can call it watching the football game, but really it's Sunday nap.
Yeah, Sunday nap time. Falling asleep in front of the football game. So, and that never rubbed off on you, right?
No, I don't. I mean, when I was a cheerleader, I cared about, but I knew the people who were playing.
You cared about the people playing, not the game itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't quite say why it's never raised my pulse, but it just doesn't. And you're right. I'm sure there's lots of depth and wonder to it that I'm missing out on, but that's true of a lot of things. Can't experience it all. Okay. And right, here we are with puppy. Melanie. Right, so Melanie says, you guys have a natural approach to your health, but what about your dogs? What do you feed them? Do you get them vaccinated or do you skip those? Since Yo-Yo died, I found a holistic group of Yorkies, and now my dogs are off of heartworm poison / drugs. Gone are my flea collars, and now I'm feeding them a raw diet, and I'm a major advocate for that. Also, we finally picked up our puppy about 2 months ago. We named him Kaipo, which means sweetheart in Hawaiian. I'm from Hawaii originally. Here he is. Oh my goodness. Toad. Wow. And here he is with Yuki. I think Jen will like these photos.
Oh, those are lovely.
Yep, those are excellent photos. You remember it was Yuki and Yo-Yo, and Yo-Yo they'd only just got her or him last year, and he just died unexpectedly, and it was very, very sad. And so I'm really, really happy that, was it Kaipo is in your life. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
You can see from the last photo that Yuki is smiling. He was mourning when we brought home Kaipo in early March. He started perking up. He's so happy now. It's the most I've ever seen him smiling. Kaipo is very different than Yo-Yo, very laid back, and he even has separation anxiety for out of his eyesight. All right, so folks, you got to go to dogs.rahdo.com. Kaipo is to die for. All righty, but anyway, Honey Pie, yes. Approach to dog health.
Well, yes, so all of our dogs have gotten their vaccinations.
Okay.
I don't necessarily do the knee jerk every year you vaccinate them again.
Oh.
Kind of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And the only thing that I'm really beyond their first...
Does that make you an anti-vaxxer?
No, it doesn't, because...
We're vaccinated, by the way, folks. We get all the flu shots and everything. Anyway, but go on.
No, I don't think it makes me an anti-vaxxer. The problem with animal vaccines is they will give the same amount of vaccine to a Great Dane that they will to a Yorkie.
Really?
Yes. So if you have smaller dogs, I think it's really worth looking into. You can get tighter information where they check the amount of antibodies in the blood to see if your dog does need some additional...
Oh, you can do a test before to see if they need it.
Exactly. So that is an option, but...
What was that? Tighter?
Tighter.
How do you spell that?
Titre, I think.
All right. I've never heard that term, but anyway, go on.
Okay. So the only thing that I have to keep up on is the rabies vaccination, and that's because we do intend to travel with our dogs, and you can't get them back into England if they don't have current rabies vaccinations. Mm-hmm. But that's a once every 3 years vaccination. Okay. They will recommend you doing it every year, but it is not necessary. It's just not necessary. So I guess I get by with the very least that I can possibly get by. I think it's very important to get your puppies vaccinated and give them that lifelong protection. Whether you need the 7-in-1 every year like the vet would like you to pay for, I don't think that that's necessary.
All right.
So I guess I'm slightly anti-vax that way, but I think there's good reasons for that. And even the vets themselves say that you don't need to vaccinate as frequently as some of the recommendations.
Really? Oh, okay. So you're not just, you're going based off veterinarian recommendations that you respect and trust as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. So we don't do heartworm.
Why not? Do you agree that it's poison, as Melanie believes? Or, have you read bad things about it on Mercola as well, or?
Not particularly heartworm. I think it's because we've lived internationally in various places, there were things like in Malta that we had to get done. The sandfly vaccination.
Oh, sure,
was really important because that was a local problem
that will kill your dog.
Yeah, and so we did do that. I just think you need to take a look at the area that you're in and assess the risk of that particular pest in that particular location.
Oh, okay.
As far as flea collars, we don't do flea collars. We do a...
Did you ever? I think, did Scuttle have flea collars?
Yeah.
And at some point you stopped.
Yeah, that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That was when Frontline came out.
Okay.
And I agree, it's probably not great, but on the other hand, to never have those pests...
Because Frontline is, instead of putting a flea collar on, you give them a little... It's an injection of some sort, right?
No, it's just some drops of goo that you put between their shoulders, remember?
But it ends up in their system, I
It does. It absorbs into the body and is stored in the fat.
And makes them poison to bugs.
Essentially.
Right?
Yeah. So when the bug bites them, the bug dies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we do essentially the same thing now, but we use Brevecta, which is an edible instead of a topical.
Oh, all right.
Yep. But that's 4 times a year, and I guess I feel like the benefits outweigh any problems. I don't think, as far as I know, none of our dogs have ever had any physical problems from any of that.
Yeah.
So I guess if there was a problem, or if I started hearing about a problem, I would certainly make a new decision. What we try and feed raw or barf, which is bones and raw foods.
Okay.
B-A-R-F.
Mm-hmm.
I buy this stuff that has aloe. Oh, what is it? What's it called? Avocet. It's avocados. Mm-hmm. Is one of the main ingredients in it because I like avocados. I think they're very healthy. Anyway, so we probably feed 60-40 raw to dry dog food. And the reason that we do that is because Daisy had an operation when she was younger to have her anal glands removed, and too much bones in there makes her very uncomfortable. So she needs some soft commercial dog food, essentially, to cushion all of that going through.
What is the commercial dog food?
It's the Avocet.
Oh, that's okay. That was the name of
the stuff that's made with avocados and other things. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Before Daisy's, for the last 10 years, all of our dogs were 100% on barf. Much,
yeah.
The diets.
Foods, yeah.
Yep.
And they did great. I mean, beagles especially, because they love to eat, tend to be real tubbos, and we were able to keep Dobby and Tula.
Yeah, they were slim and svelte.
And actually, our 2 girls now are getting a little bit pudgy because
you maybe need to adjust 70-30 instead of 60-40.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's see. Is that all the questions?
That was it. And then there was all the Kaipo and all the Yuki.
Lovely.
All right, and it sounds like, Melanie, that Jen largely agrees with your approach.
Yep, and I think if you talk to your vet about it too, they will probably come clean and say, yep, there are the same dosage for whatever size dog you've got. No, you probably don't need it every year. We can look at it maybe every other year, every 3 years. Talk to your vet.
All right.
He might even say even 5 years, or maybe once in a lifetime is all you need for this particular vaccination.
Okie doke. Alrighty. Then we move on to Dale, who has a picture of Vicky, the guide dog. Rather strange name for a dog, but the Guide Dog Association names litters after certain letters of the alphabet. Vicky's litter was actually an O, so we had to deduce that her name was sponsored by someone paying to name the guide dog. Maggie, the golden retriever, is in the background, is no longer with us, but that was a guide dog for 8 years. I furthermore had a question, but it was a bit heavy, and we'll give you guys a break. All the best. Thanks, Dale. So there's Vicky.
Oh, okay.
And who's in the background? Who is sadly no longer with us? Maggie in the background.
Oh.
Okay. So.
Bless them.
Wow. I mean, okay.
Guide dogs do such good work.
Yeah.
And the people that make guide dogs, kudos to them. That's a lot of training.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We watched some series, like 6-part episode series where it went through all the stages. Yeah. Yep. That was a really good show. I think that was on the Disney Channel, if I recall. I'm almost positive it was on the Disney Channel. A 6-part documentary series about what it takes to create a guide dog or train a guide dog. Is amazing. And Vicky, who should have been named Oscar, obviously, or Ophelia. So if somebody broke the rules, Vicky looks awesome too. Okay, and honey, the last question of the month. As always, are you ready with your words of wisdom?
No, I'm
She was not even remotely prepared, even though Henrik is always there. I think he's only ever missed once.
I had no idea we were coming up to it that quickly.
Yep.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, I'm going to hit this pause button and give you a second.
Thank you.
Hold on, everybody.
Okay.
Except I can't push the button. There we go. Okay, we're back. After doing a quick, it's an Instagram search, right? Or no, you pin them on Pinterest? Is that what it is? I forget.
Well,
that you have your big...
everywhere, but this is from Facebook.
Oh, this was one in Facebook that you liked or saved?
Yep.
All right, hold on. Let me switch over to the browser. Jen sent it over to me. And go.
People with good intentions make promises, but people with good character keep them.
Okay. Folks, have good character. I will certainly try. And that's it, folks. The podcast is done once again. And as always, thanks for listening. And as always, please, please, please send your questions into podcasts. Or no, questions. Questions.rahdo.com. Because without your questions, we got no show. And I'm going to say thanks as always. I already said that. I'm going to stop saying it. I'm just going to say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.